The tale kicks off with Cross itching to talk to Aga. Because this talk couldn't wait, right as things were getting started, Cross blurts that they finally hit the exact spot they wanted, then tells them it still isn't enough. He wants to crush the whirlpool with this crew. Aga lights up and says, "That sounds perfect," like everyone's finally strong enough to back it up. But Cross's heart dropped to his stomach. He couldn't stop thinking about reshuffling the whole group. And yeah, some people just couldn't belong on a mission this important. They'd end up as a problem, dragging everyone down. He had no doubt something good would come for them. Then he asked Ago if he really understood everything, and of course he did. Cross was totally falling apart in that moment, tears streaming, and he demanded Ega step out of the group, because Cross knew exactly what was going on. Then we jumped back 6 years, when Cross walked up to Ega at the Magic Academy and asked him to team up, promising they'd become the best adventurers there ever were. Ega couldn't help asking when Cross said royalty wanted him. Then Cross hit him with, "So you really think this life is boring? Think about it." Next thing Ega knew, he was in, living for the thrill. Roaming the world, smashing enemies, making new friends, and chasing fresh goals, while Cross was absolutely seething about having to live by rules so strict they felt suffocating. Aniga burst into laughter at the whole mess, then Cross snapped, asking what on earth was going on. But yeah, he wasn't just laughing at him, Iga was pretending to, and that's what made it sting. Because at that same moment, Iga's got the exact same dream. Forget nobility, reality, and all those brutal rules. He just wants to run free, do what he wants, and get paid every month. He wants growth that happens on its own, not some leash, not some don't do that. Iga craves respect, fame, real success, and he refuses to be labeled a coward, and honestly, that mindset is straight up wild, so that's why everything went down the way it did. Cross pulls Aga into the group, swearing that together they'll claw their way to the very top of every adventurer's career. Iga grins, shrugs it off like it's all good, and tells them both, "You're free, let's kick off our journey together." He begged and begged, pushing the idea of ditching teachers of magic onto his colleagues. They had it figured out from the start, even though everyone knew that job could swallow people whole. Only the few who could survive and win ever made it. Without teams formed right away, the odds would drop to basically 1 or 2 after 5 years, and because it was a gamble, it wasn't just a bet, it was a bet you lived or died by. But Aga had already been hit by misfortune, because the first real lead-on Cross was nothing but a trap, and none of them knew the truth. The real Cross was already sealed in certainty, hiding in plain sight, while Aga just kept charging forward like a born hero. That title only shows up once every 100 years, and if a crew gets led by a hero like that, you can bet legendary adventurers would flock in and forge a team so unstoppable it bends the world, and that's why Aga could sense so much talent. It all happened because of that other card hiding inside his ability. Of a goddess's watchful, shining eye. Where Cross finally realized the job fate had picked for him, hero. It was a technique he drilled for ages, and once he was still in the Magic Academy's advanced class, he used it flawlessly. Because it let him read the future roles people would take, spot their strengths, and even foresee the skills and magic they'd eventually master. Obviously, nobody clocked Aga as a threat. He was stuck forcing that awful pose, and everyone just shrugged it off like, "Nah, he's only being weird." Aga, though. He never figured it was a bet from the start, because he was dead sure Cross was the real hero. Yeah, that damn career was pure misery from start to finish. Monster attacks crushed him, and before he even found his footing in that chosen line of work, he was basically useless, but luck hit when Aga could slam through most cases on his own skill. They still had other part-time jobs just to survive, and then a week flew by. A group of adventurers stepped in and snapped, "Cut it out. This isn't the time for you two to try to take down that massive monster yourselves." And if they still forgot last time when they were seconds from being trampled, they'd have to be crazy to think they could win like that after leveling up a few times in just 1 week. Soon, Aga demands that Cross show him everything he's got, and Cross absolutely charges at the monster without hesitation. It chops off its head in a single deadly swing, and then, like nothing happened, it lands there calmly. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. When did that kid get this kind of power, and how in the world did he pull it off in just 1 week, not even a single day more? Of course, Iga had Cross right in their sights, and it was a blessing agreement too, with a second ability on the line, so with a teammate who can use magic, they'd rake in double the experience. Soon, Cross and Iga lock eyes and touch hands, right when their worlds start to feel way too real. That journey kept exploding in scale, and after 5 long years of pulling missions together, the group finally stood fully built. Iga's team, right near the present eye of a goddess, was a total lifesaver when everyone was still a bunch of rookies, and that blessing deal practically shoved them up the ranks overnight, leveling the whole group fast. But as the missions kept getting brutal and beating the Demon King drew nearer, those powers started turning into nothing but a weakness. With those two powers gone, Ega was just an ordinary guy, but he still threw himself into everything he could, fighting tooth and nail to help. So yeah, someone asking to leave the group wasn't going to change anything. It was only a matter of time before that moment finally landed. One night Ega was talking, and he even told Cross he'd pack a few things to hand over. Then Cross shut it down and said they didn't need to do all that, but Ega insisted these were precious items, and a girl chimed in that even useful tools could help them out, so the whole team was calm and fine as long as those two agreed. Ega stays tight-lipped, and Cross warns that if he keeps running with the adventure, he'll need some essentials, so Ega shrugs like, all good, because he's already heading out. Roberta shot to her feet and promised, next night we board the Belt ship, the Adventurers Guild headquarters, and for us, that meant the city of glory we'd been chasing in our dreams. That's why Cross tells Ega, let's pull the farewell party forward tomorrow at noon, and fires off. So what do we buy? Drinks take time, the pretty girls aren't going to book themselves, so don't stand there. What are you thinking, like a kid? But one girl in the group snaps with rage, and it turns into a total disaster. After the party, he's forced to talk her through it, because separation is on the table, but she might already have her own plans. Still, Edgar insists he knows exactly what to do, and that they can just go home. But before Roberta can finish, he blurts out thanking Aga for everything, but when Aga asks, what did I even do? He just shrugs like it was nothing at all. They trade a warm smile, and Ega slips out with a soft good night. Ega was puffing away as he headed out, muttering that he'd have to leave now, but he had no clue how to throw a proper goodbye party, and he couldn't see any way to escape that humiliating mess, like the whole thing was just painfully weird. The second he stepped into his room, Aunt Anna was already there, grinning like she'd been waiting, telling him good morning. Ega snaps into a startle, blurts out good morning, and demands why she's been standing in front of his door. The girl blurts out why Ego is heading out so early, and he smirks that he'll sprint through even with those heavy packages, so she's left wondering one thing, will he vanish before the farewell at the fair ever happens? Ega snaps that when she saw it happen, he just vanished, no words, no manly goodbye, like he was slipping out to escape, and it wasn't like she could even stop him. Only the girl keeps shouting no, because telling him to leave the team and then still saying goodbye felt completely off and cross. She was a mess. Then she shoves a stack of papers into Iga's hands and he snaps, what is this? The girl fires back that it's the proof, everything for dedication, payments included, and tells him to double-check every single detail. Ega shoots a question, were you waiting since early just to hand me this? And the girl immediately answers, yeah, it matters a lot. Soon Iga leans in and asks if they can finally sit down and talk. And he steps up to them, asking if they can talk in the main courtyard. So they drop in and just sit there. Iga asks the girl where he should start, probes what the two planned, and she snaps back that it's none of his business. So he swallows the sting, apologizes, and vows that from this moment on, he's out of the team. Only the girl ends up getting flustered. She jumps to her feet and blurts out that's not what she meant. She admits they still have to split up, and once they do, she can't talk to anyone about her real intentions. Ega tells her to keep it down, because everyone in that building was already asleep. Then she whips her gaze to Ega and realizes he's stomping down on every single thing. So she leans in and demands to know exactly what his plan was after he walked out. The plan was simple, track down the other group, trade words, and then hit the road again, no stopping until the journey kept going. But the girl snaps back that Aga isn't fit for that job at all. These skills are so ridiculously insane, it's unreal. In the end, thanks to Ega, everything got way better, and since she was part of that crew, Ega was straight up overflowing with gratitude for everything he did, shamelessly so. His skills hit the absolute limit. Ega warns, if I don't push to get better, I'll never know if I truly made it. But deep down he knew she was right, because once his skills hit their absolute ceiling, nobody understood it better than him. Now he was 27, and real potential like that is rare as lightning, if he could slip into another group and unleash his skills to make them stronger. Then bolt out of there and keep sprinting through that deadly loop, only to stack a brand new, carefully planned building right on top of it all. Ega hit the end of the line, her smile vanished, and a wave of sadness crashed over her. She warned that it could feel weird, but she vowed she'd take over his responsibilities from here on out, so he finally gets the life he's always dreamed of. So he had to grab that thing right now. He blurts out what it was, 500 acres of territory. The adventurer not chasing just money, and before long they're grilling them about whether he's a lord. Suddenly Ego crumpled into the docks, swallowed up by the port. He froze, not knowing what to do at all. Then out of nowhere they dropped, you're the lord now, and he had zero clue where to even begin. Right then someone finally shows up and blurts out that they've found the protagonist. She's with a man, and she tells Ega she just got kicked out of a group, then immediately asks if everything's okay. Ega walks out on the group without even saying goodbye to Cross, insisting he wanted to throw Ega a truly unforgettable farewell, but not to let Cross in on it, and definitely not to do something like that. And yeah, both of them were in the group too, but they weren't about to judge anyone by appearances. She was a top-tier healer everyone craved, and right next to her, Deli held the vanguard role, quietly sliding in behind Ama, staying silent until there was something to fight. Soon she declares it's only logical to toss out the useless like Aga, then she hammers him with his own question, how many times he's claimed he wasn't a burden to the group, and demands he ever actually bothered to count. Ega stayed silent for a beat, then admitted it was Cross and that girl, who kept him in the group, and immediately turned to ask if he wasn't feeling guilty about everything that went down. Deli grips the girl mid-struggle and tells her to stop, and then she twists her head and tries to rip herself free with one last swing. Ega asks if that's all she's got because the ship is already here, then she blurts out soon after. They showed up for one reason, to lay eyes on that legendary ship, the holy land every adventurer dreams of, that magnificent beast of a ship. And just like that, she promises, we'll see each other again soon. Ega storms onto the ship, and before he can blink, they're already pulling away, until the port shrinks in the distance and that sting inside him keeps getting worse and worse. As Ega wanders around, he suddenly collides with someone, and the person whips around to stare right at him. He begs Ega to wear the necklace that fights seasickness, but when Ega looks back, he promises he'll return it the moment he's better, only for the merchant to refuse and shut that down. He hurls his suitcase to the ground, then rips it open with everything he's got. He dumps every item on the ground, shouting for people to come stare at what he's got, then calls out adventurers like, enjoy the journey, because this necklace, a health remedy, is exactly what Aga, one of the 5 miracles, would have loved. So he's gunning to use it himself, and the crowd surges closer, grilling him whether Aga was really a 5 miracles hero, the famous team everyone talks about, while everyone in the room suddenly wants to buy something. Then the merchant starts raking in serious cash, and Ega snaps, asking how he dared to turn all of Cross's team into advertising. They called themselves 5 miracles, and yeah, people think it's just the folks who were there, but the truth is the 5th one was a boy, a prodigy who could tear through the greatest attack magics. And here's the kicker. Ega doesn't even count as a miracle, because the merchant straight up says if he hadn't given that speech, nobody would have bought a thing, and that's exactly how a real merchant earns his name. He blurts out an apology for riding Ega's ex-fame, then swings right into it. I'm Galcius. He's a merchant, one of the 5 miracles saved him once, and Ega swears she recognizes him, but it's just that nagging feeling. Still, Galcius presses, asking where she's headed now, like she's about to get dragged into another mission to spread even more news. But Ega shrugs off the suspicion and says he's only on a sightseeing tour. The merchant narrows his eyes, freaked that the girl's not beside him, and demands, where did she go? Ego shoots back, maybe she's with Cross. The merchant demanded to know why Ega was sent out, and that cold, harsh attitude instantly set the protagonist off, rage burning hot. Then the trip hits like a cure. This is supposed to mend a shattered heart, so once the merchant realizes what's going on, he cuts his losses and hurries off, saying he's got a business meeting to rush to. Ega tells him wait just a second, and on pure obligation he fires up his Eye of the Gods right on top of Galcius, just to check if there's anything shady going on, and turns out Galcius really is a legit merchant, even if he doesn't exactly look the part. Turns out the number of people locked into their destined jobs was way bigger than anyone expected, because the real world didn't match the hype, like a fisherman with insane skill who ends up swinging an axe as a lumberjack, or a true-born player who's really stuck working around the church instead. Galcius could turn into a solid ally if Ega can actually hold his ground in the territory, and right then Galcius asks if Ega wants to talk about his feelings. Ega doesn't have the time, so Galcius says he has to go, then clarifies he's only taking a quick tour, and that's it. The eye made people blurt out, why didn't anyone tell him this before? And after that, Galcius ran the company for as long as they stayed on the ship. On that ship, they're closing in on another port, so they press for directions and ask where Ega wants to go, the same city where they already crushed the giant serpent. They finally unleashed everything they had right there, turning the battlefield into a full-on war against a serpent. After all, those lands were handed to him as a reward, and then Galcius pops up and says, this is exactly where I wanted to go. They decide to swing through a city for a quick stop before pressing on, and when they arrive, Ega handles the words with the merchant. Ega's got a feeling it'll go that way, and sure enough, the merchant praises Ega like crazy, only Ega realizes they're just buttering him up with flattery. Soon they push through the gateway into the Far East, and everything feels worlds away, with a culture so different it hits like a shock. Ego starts draining his own energy, mumbling that it's time to loosen up, then promises they'll keep the journey going tomorrow. But when he finally wakes up, there's already a drink in his hands, and he's totally blank, like he can't place where he even is. Then a girl pops up at the door, grinning as she says Ego must have wanted a bit more sleep, and that her services totally hit the mark the night before. He suddenly remembers everything, thrilled, but his head's pounding like crazy. Before long, she offers to help him change, yet Ego is still a total mess every morning. He finally cracks it and uses the Eye of the Gods to confirm she's a healing sorceress. And then, when the tab lands in his hands, it's a jaw-dropping 50 million at the daily exchange rate. Soon she insists the price stays at 50 million since the coins are the same. Aga starts to overthink it, but the girls lay out how the service works, exactly like Galshus said, because he picked the best class. And yeah, Aga doesn't just get annoyed, she's clearly irritated. Then he hands over cash on the spot and the girl lights up, thanking him for his generosity, because her services blow him away, but by the time it's over, he's dumped half his money right there. If you want to reach where Iga's headed, you'd better be ready, 3 days straight. And right on another ship, Galshus suddenly shows up and blurts that it was just a coincidence back then. Aga decides to press for answers about that place, and before long Galadius blurts out, "It was magnificent," then rushes in with a sincere apology. Because he ended up putting Iga to the test. And they press for answers, why did this happen? When Galshus straight up says he figured it was because he'd bilate on the group. So he started thinking about it all. If he'd ever grown tired of adventuring and turned into a broken mess, any merchant would have steered clear of him, and with Galshus watching to see exactly how much he'd burn at that inn, every move felt like a trap built to make him cough up millions without blinking. That realization hit hard, and it left him convinced he'd been totally wrong, so he ended up bowing and apologizing for what he'd done. Ega clenches himself, gripping tight as the moment hits. Saying he was right, after all, they'd thrown him out of the group. And until then, Aga spilled every detail to Galshias, everything that had happened, even the fact that he planned to govern a territory. Galshias listened, understood the whole picture, and smiled like destiny was knocking. He'd always wanted to kick off trade in that exact place. And that's how Aga insists Galshias will turn into a legit game-changing ally. Then he shrugs and admits he never even wanted to be a lord, yet somehow he still sees the exact kind of land he's meant to rule, and really, it all comes down to that plus. Starting now, he cuts ties with the other 5, so Galshus is free to make Aga's assistant. If he doesn't want company, he should dock at the next port, handle his own business like always, and keep it a little distant. Galshia tries to get his attention, but Ago just slips past her in silence, and after that, they don't even trade a single word. Just like Aga predicted, once he was cut loose from the group, he got tossed aside and turned into dead weight. 3 days dragged by, and then Aga finally showed up at the ship he was supposed to reach. The whole place got overrun by animals, pure chaos, everything smashed to pieces, and it felt absolutely brutal. Iga asks if that place was meant to be a port, and he can't even wrap his head around how that would work, because their document says the territory starts at the very next step. And when Aga won't step on the wood, the whole body drops hard, like gravity snaps in half. It's way worse than he ever imagined, and now somehow he's standing there as the owner of the place. That port looks absolutely wrecked. Then bam, Galshus showed up, straight up asking whether Iga wanted backup. Ego clenched his jaw and fought back the tears. And then grabs Galshus, hand like it's the only lifeline he's got. Galshia says it's basically the coolest glow-up ever, going from a roaming adventurer to a feudal lord. Right then he starts asking, so what can we even do? But he still needs a moment to wrap his head around it, until Aga blurts out thanks for everything, and immediately mangles Galshias' name. The instant he hears it, rage snaps through him, because among merchants getting his name wrong is a huge taboo. Galshias fumes that it's proof Aga should just vanish and never come back, and with that explosion, yeah, these are the very first steps to Aga's land. Aga's area sat right on the far eastern edge of the country, and locals say it's home to 7 villages packed with about 2,500 people total. Even though he came to that spot just to figure out how he'd rule the land, it's already been 2 whole hours since Aga showed up there. And all he's seen so far is one lonely person. Galshia burst in, startled, and told Aga that something was going down, then turned to me and demanded, "Why are you scared when you've seen places with real residents?" But deep down, it wasn't a person at all, it was a full-blown monster. Galshus lunges to Aga for help, and the two of them sprint off without a second to waste. Their danger level is stamped in the eye color. Red eyes mean the San Andreas is way more lethal, and Galshia just declared that they're going to lose his life right now. Then Aga geared up, unleashed his magic, and wiped those wasps out for good. Galadius jolts in shock. And then he blurts out, seriously, it was incredible, because he can drop this huge spell, only for it to turn out it's just basic offensive fire magic at the end of the day. Every offensive fire magic goes by the same name, but for Aga's honesty, no matter how hard he tried to master the intermediate or even the strongest spell he could cast, he just couldn't figure out how to unlock the higher level ones. No matter how hard he pushed, the magic just kept landing as painfully average, unless you count that rare special exception. The monsters vanish for good, and Galcius can't even hide his excitement, because they were just bees all along, and that victory feels like something a coward like him would celebrate. They bust out laughing, and before long Galcius blurts out, "Wait, what's wrong?" But there's nothing, not really, just a hope that one day he'll learn how to take down a monster like that. Ega Aka the blessing chords on Galcius, and now every battle will stack twice the experience for him. Even with Galcius only a temporary companion, the court doesn't slow down, it keeps working, praying it'll land the same result it's meant to. Unfortunately, that power's range is insanely good, so Ega is doing his usual best, because the Court of the Pension is deadly useful, but it still hits a hard limit, and every time it messes with his head. Maybe she's got a point. Pretty soon they're walking again, and Gausius spots something off. Right ahead sits a house, but it looks more like a tent than a real home, and yeah, it's definitely a house. An old lady finally steps out, and right away Galcia rushes over to Grandma, explaining they're on the move, and that it's his first time ever seeing a place like this. Soon they start doubting they'll hurt her, then press, "Do you know a little village around here?" The lady's smile fades fast, she looks crushed and wonders why travelers would come to a place like this. Then Aga's brain clicks into gear. After explaining everything to her, she finally accepts and agrees to show them what she knows. And then they head for the village, and right away Ega asks if she's really living here. She nods, yes. But a giant monster snatched the neighbors and even her son, so now she's alone, dragging herself through each empty day. Ega rushes to apologize while Galcius is sobbing, begging her not to be crushed, because no matter how dark it feels, hope always waits, if you can just hold on a little longer. She finally snaps, "I'm not weak," and proves it by pushing through the hardest places like it's nothing. Ega couldn't shake that weird feeling. Grandma was right, and he just knew she had something way more special up her sleeve, because her destined occupation was idle, and she'd always remind him, never judge a book by its cover. Then right on cue, the rain comes crashing down. And hours later, they were still trudging down the road like they couldn't stop. Ega couldn't even breathe right, and sure enough, his own strength proved it. He was going to be wiped out. And if Ega ever dares to tell Grandma he's an adventurer, she'll laugh him out of the room, just like Cross's team would. Ego couldn't stop wondering where it was coming from, while the glorious city of the twin princesses blazed all around him. Right after they trip and Gausius asks if Ega's okay, he huffs out a long sigh, clutches himself, and keeps replaying one question: why did that move stop everything? Days later, weak monsters that lurk in the shadows like rats crawl out, and he's so worn out he nearly loses his life just for exploring that mountain, and yeah, it almost feels like he can live some glorious life. He didn't just train, he leveled up into an unforgettable adventurer, soaking up praise until he became everyone's last hope. Then he rode back to the main city to celebrate what he'd truly earned with his companions. And yeah, I nailed every mission and every level 5 demon. But Egon knew it was time to face reality, and right then the lady finally said, "We're here." What? After I climbed up to get a good look at the top of that mountain, he narrowed his eyes and stared at the spot where the sun blazed down, and for a heartbeat the whole world went quiet while Iga scanned the people down below. The lady says it's this massive wave of monsters that has suddenly marched west, and with no time to breathe, the villages are forced to flee and cram south, hundreds of them. Ega squints and goes, "Wait, there have to be thousands of them." Then he leans in and asks what the people were doing. They're slamming together a barricade, and he's got to stay sharp, because that furious current is ready to tear everything apart. Iga dove into agriculture and now has to do two things at once: read the soil's condition and wrestle with the water resources, because right now, water is the nightmare hanging over that whole place. Everyone was fighting for survival, chopping firewood, tending crops, yet that gorgeous scene wasn't made by Mother Nature alone or by humans by themselves. It's all about how humans clash with nature, and Ega had never once stopped to think about what it would mean to rule that territory. But now that land felt like it had a pulse, like it was alive and watching him. So he bursts into action and unleashes his magic. And from this moment on, he's stepping into his fate, becoming a lord. Galcius leans in dead serious, "So, Iga, are you gonna become an adventurer or not?" And Iga snaps back, "I'm not leaving this place." But he's got a special mission waiting for him on that land, one that'll turn the whole place into something so deadly that even the strongest demon won't dare step foot in it. And Galcius fires off questions about the residents, but don't panic, because he's got that old ability to fall back on, even if he blanks in the moment. The unmatched power that never once let him down, the destiny that would shape his work, and the mighty foundation the kingdom was built on. Right after they push all the way to the edge of the Far East, deep inside the forest. And just when it looked bad enough, more monsters surged in, killer wasps, a whole vicious horde. Once Aega was officially made a lord, he had no choice. He had to rush to the imperial city to claim his certificate of territory, and man, it was an absolute nightmare. After crushing those monsters, the next boat won't show up until the crack of dawn the day after tomorrow, so for now, they rush into the southern villages, and then, 2 days later, they finally arrive. At that exact moment, this random guy blurts, "So what are you two doing right now?" And just like that, boredom crashed the party. Soon, Amo sat down with Aunt Anna, because the tea demanded it, and the whole place fussed over that genius girl's careful, delicate offering. Soon, Ama lanes in and asks if she's listening, only to realize the girl is totally lost in a daydream. She was brushing off everything and everyone like they didn't exist. Then Ama screams with all her might, full volume, only for the girl to pause, frown, and ask what's going on. Ama tries to push it off like, "Are you worried about Ego or something?" But it's obvious that's not what this is about. Matt keeps insisting there's no saving someone weak, and getting booted from the group is just what Ega had coming. He'd always been shoved to the back anyway. Then the girl snaps, "Listen, there's a Demon King class mission coming, and you're not fit for it." To soften the blow and send him off without stress, they hand him a huge compensation. Everyone on the team nodded in unison, and honestly nobody saw a problem with it, yet she still wore that heartbreaking, sad face. Seeing her make that face while I pushed her like that was the kind of mistake that wasn't fun at all. Pretty soon, a crew of adventurers swarmed up and asked, "Can we sit here?" because they couldn't take their eyes off the girls. And then bam, the flirts start flying because Emma's a total knockout, and that kind of attention from men isn't some rare miracle. But sadly, she was suddenly free, so they could have gotten the chance to offer her tea, yet their eyes were locked on the other girl, since her glasses made her look like she'd never miss a beat. The girl blurts out what they were even after, while Amo desperately tries to steal a little attention. Then bam, she gets shoved aside with everything that's happening right then. Deli gripped those adventurers by the arms and hauled them in, and Ama snapped, "What are you doing here?" Deli blurts out that he thinks she's the prettiest, and the girl smiles. Then the truth hits, because praise from that boy doesn't make her feel happy at all. The adventurers demanded to go, and the whole group practically burst with excitement. Roberta shows up out of nowhere, asking if those guys wanted something with her crew. Turns out they don't, and the moment it sinks in, everyone panics because the adventurers quickly realize those people were all connected to the 5 miracles. The girl blurts out, "I'm slammed with everything right now, please forgive me." But they've got to clear out fast, only 3 seconds to do it, then they bolt straight out of there. Now that everyone's finally gathered, it's time to march into the sacred land. Eyes up, stay sharp, don't miss a thing. Cross vows they'll keep pushing through the next tiers, and he tells Aga to watch over them while he heads to the port. Every single person could feel it the moment they arrived. And everyone's eyes were glued to the 5 miracles, begging for their signatures and whatever it was they could offer, and the girls were buzzing with pure excitement. And just like that, everyone held their breath, waiting for the interview, because the next objective had to be revealed, and the girls were hanging around Deli. And so everyone starts to flinch in surprise. Deli even blurts that, even with everyone together, he still can't wrap his head around how Cross ended up being the top pick among all the girls. Not long after, a journalist pushes in and grills Cross, asking whether he'll share his future plans for the 5 miracles and what drove him to live for that sacred land. Roberta ends up gripping herself, telling them exactly where they're headed, because the only goal is simple: win every single battle. That land exists for one reason only: to welcome the Demon King's legendary mission, and that's exactly what it was built for. But he's not done talking because he's got one more bombshell, and everyone snaps to attention to catch what's coming next. Cross says their fight is only getting started, and honestly, that's exactly how it feels. But honestly, that remark hit hard. Everyone was buzzing about it. AIMA knows Cross tosses out the same tired cliches, yet the media keeps spinning them like they're pure genius. Soon, a journalist barges in and fires a question at them, right when you'd think the name 5 Miracles should have answered everything. Then it hits someone's missing, and the guy blurts what's going on with the group. Every single one of them drops into a heavy, sad stare, and yeah, in fact, they're down 2 people now, but nobody really knows what's up with Ega himself. The girl finally steps up and blurts that Amargo took off on her own expedition, and she's coming to meet them in just a few days, so everyone can breathe easy. That genius mage was nowhere to be found. and somehow, even as a kid, she still took a mission solo, which was honestly wild. And Marie, probably the strongest one in the crew, lived up to the hype too, ready with a scorching, soft-spoken proposal. But that no problem line was a straight-up lie. When she comes back and learns Ago got expelled, things are about to blow up. Emma wasn't the only one coming back either, so they could finally handle the whole mess. But now she can't stop wondering what Ago's up to, and whether he's getting along with the people back in his own territory. Meanwhile, they finally hit the village, supplies running low, so they crash there and rest. Aga leans in and quizzes Galcius, and he explains the truth. Locals are super cautious with outsiders, so they might just play it off and tell people they're tourists. People crowded in around them, firing questions. Who were they right then, and where did they come from? Soon Ega shoots the question, should they surrender or what? Galcius jolts in panic and snaps at Ega to get ready, right now. But instead of brushing them off, they smiled and asked, so where did you all come from? How old are they really? Are they hungry or just looking for a meal? Because the folks here were super hospitable. And if they're married, are they just tourists or do they have a place to stay? Before it escalates, the village chief steps in and orders them to stop, because they're stirring up trouble for the visitors. So when his chief showed up, there was no room for panic anymore. Now they could finally sit down and talk it out calmly. But then the village chief clamped down on it, insisting they'd stay the night at his place, even though every single person in town was desperate to meet the visitors. That night they kicked back on a big box in the chief's gigantic house, soaking in the massive, intimidating space. The chief finally caves and apologizes because the villagers won't stop making noise, and Ago, who really wanted to crash there for the night, stays on high alert the whole time, soaking up every moment. In the end, he's still serving food and drink, and his wife is sweet, kind, and beautiful in the village, too. Then Ega turns to the village chief and blurts out, so what do you all do for a living? The chief gets totally thrown off, then fumbles out the truth. People mostly hate sticking to certain tasks. They were chopping wood for a living, full-on lumberjacks, and you could tell right away, because every single one of them looked built like a brick wall. The chief finally declares, my sauce is the best. Then after a bit more talk, he wraps it up and reveals this is Wood Village, home to about 150 people. People think it's about chopping lumber, but lumberjack isn't really about cutting wood. It's about the workers tied to sawing and wood cutting. While they crank out wood and sell the merchandise, they also haul stuff around for business, right up on scaffolding. Iga jumps in and asks if this kind of hustle actually pays off, and you know the answer is yes, especially after everything that just went down. The giant serpent Aga's crew crushed before was back, and it was tearing the entire kingdom apart. Ironically, the attack sparked a surge in wood demand, and the economy ballooned because of it. Fall hard 7 times, get up 8, those are the rules here. The folk of this place live up to the chief's legend, and when Iga fires the divine eye at every single villager, he realizes they're all lumberjacks. The divine eye doesn't just look, it reveals who's fit for the job, flashes the skills and magic people trained, and judges their potential, but it never tells you what they do right now. To figure out their current job, you needed a high-level skill called Observe Status, but Ega was a loser with only basic training, so he couldn't learn it at all, which meant he had no way to know what those people were doing right now. After a calm look around, he finally clocked it. No lumberjacks, no fishermen, just empty spots where they should have been. Turns out some folks in town don't have jobs yet, they're future adventurers. So he quietly checked the 10 youngest in the village, and yep, 2 of them were already marked as adventurers. That night, Galcius leans in and asks if Aga's been overthinking, or if he's using his power like it's a cheat. Ega pressed him for what Galadius was even thinking, then Galadius just stared back like, I don't get it yet. So he'd have to tell everyone which job was the best, and then slam people into the chosen roles, because that's how the whole territory would blow up and grow. But Galcius didn't give the situation a second thought. The very next day, the village chief's jaw drops because Iga suddenly wants to head to the biggest town around, one with 1,200 people. Like, he's not after trouble, he just wants to go see it with his own eyes. Some people were hauling trees toward the nearby territory, and it was basically setting up a path to guide Aga and Galcius straight to the place they'd been trying to reach, while everything that happened kept pushing them forward, and they couldn't help but thank it all. The village chief grabs the girl's attention and tells her to stick with the protagonist, because that's how it all starts. The girl finally steps up and reassures him, everything's okay, nothing happened. Iga finally steps forward and introduces himself, and that's when he learns the woman's name is Chiyo, the exact martial artist everyone saw the day before, and Galcia wastes no time, telling her it's a real pleasure to meet her. Then she yells at the lumberjacks to haul 10 logs at a time. Iga asks if she'll need a hand, but those guys are insanely strong. Then they started moving, quick and unstoppable. Right in the middle of it, she snaps, "Stop," because the road ahead is too dangerous, so they toss that route and hunt for a safer way. Then she points at the first group, orders them to make the turn, and tells everyone to follow that exact path, nice and clean, with light, smooth load movements. She could spot a busted wheel and fix it in a blink, because all she had to do was ask. Stunned, they sank into the mud, but no one panicked. Everyone just shoved together and hauled their way out. Iga's jumping in too, because it's necessary, so they kept cleaning and cleaning until it was done. Chio turns out to be seriously amazing for someone so young. She explains she's doing all of this because she started as a kid, and then Aga snaps, asking if she's the transport leader carrying the logs, just like the chief said she was. At the end, the chief cooked up a meal for both of them. Aga leaned in asking what it was, while Galshia's stomach growled like it couldn't wait. After she drops off the food, she leans in and tells them, "That rice, it grew right back in our village." After a while, they finally tuck in, and man, the rice hits like heaven, and even the water tastes amazing. Ega digs in then, right there in the middle of everything. He can't help it. He starts getting hyped like he's right on the edge of the action. When Shio hears that she grew up in some seriously gorgeous place, her cheeks blaze red, and suddenly she's all fired up about it. Soon enough, they reach the biggest village around. Then Ega rushes to Chio and apologizes for dragging her into guiding them, but she waves it off like it's nothing, because they've just wrapped up a delivery right there. But Galshus couldn't ignore it. Something felt off, because that village was weirdly, unnervingly silent. Soon he can't shake the thought that the folks here never show themselves the way they did back in the old village, and even the larger towns people seem to hate anything that's different, with kids right in the middle of it. Galshias rushes up to her and blurts out that he's got chocolate, and yeah, he's even got a bunch of toys with him. Chio finally snaps. She begs Galshi to stop showing up and creeping back toward them again and again. And then just like that, the kids tear off and rush into each mom's arms. They dash inside the house, and everyone crowds the doorway windows and even peeks out from every corner, while Galshia insists this can't possibly be true, yet Ega somehow is shocked to find he actually likes kids. Chio then lays it out, these people aren't like the ones in her village. Strangers get the cold shoulder hard, and even Chio isn't exactly welcome there. Foreigners. They're even more avoided, like the whole place is just shy in a way that screams, "Don't come closer." Soon Ega leans in and tells Galshus, "Last night I said people are pulled straight into the jobs they're meant to do, so if you're destined to be a lumberjack, you'll end up there." And Shio just can't wrap her head around it. How would anyone actually show up there like that? Since that's just how they are, the people in that village are going to struggle to get used to it. In the others, Galshus finally snaps out his truth. He says he understands what Iga means. Then he makes it crystal clear. Shoving people into the jobs they were taught won't grow a territory, and that's the whole point he was hammering home. So if they're trying to build the strongest squad in the whole world, they'd need the top 10 sword masters, the top 10 mages, and the top 10 healers. Then stack it into 100 absolute monsters from their own classes, and that should do the trick. But real life hits harder than that. This all comes down to one thing: will they actually team up or not? If they won't, then pushing them is pointless. Trying to pull off a territory deal is even worse. Getting just 5 or 10 people together is hard enough, and IGA still has to rally a whopping 2,500. If you treat people like they're just numbers, failure is basically guaranteed. Development is like growing crops in silver culture, and those are the two sharp skills each person has, so balancing them perfectly is the make or break. But Iga knew one thing for sure: this road wouldn't be smooth for a second. Chio totally misses the point of what they're saying, like she doesn't even know what she's supposed to hate in her own territory, because where the urban folk call it boring, Ega's world is completely the opposite. That place was insanely fascinating, and he couldn't stop thinking, I have to live there. Soon her excitement bursts out as she demands, "You mean it?" Ega grins and says, "Yes, serious," and swears that next time he shows up there, he'll raise a house, then when the moment hits, he'll make Chio rush in with wood right away. She swears it was a promise, then he tells Chio goodbye, and they race straight for the Imperial City. But the cold bit hard, like winter claws sinking in. And Ega missed the bed from the day before, couldn't stand sleeping outside, and all he wanted was a hot meal. Galshia blasts out that he's insanely loud, and Ego just wants to lock in a comfy life as soon as humanly possible. By the next day, he's set to roll into another city's port, and right there, Aga presses him to look into rewriting the territory certificate. Galshias blurts out, "Do you really need my help?" And Aga fires back, "Why would you ask me that right now?" But Galshias was dead set on meeting his own business partners, just to say hi, and if he could, to steer them toward a more imperial city, so Aga should head there alone. That train to the Imperial City won't stop for $2.30, so he needs a cigarette right now. After he grabbed the stuff, he ended up lighting a cigarette and flipping through the newspaper, but he couldn't make heads or tails of the language from that place at all. So he starts wondering, does any newspaper out there even get printed in the international language? After hunting for ages, everyone kept saying, nope, nothing like that exists, but Aga, true to his word, told them he knew a spot where adventurers could even get a newspaper right there beside him. When he stared harder, he realized nothing was there. The place was totally empty. Down in the Far East, there's always an Adventurers Guild branch waiting, ready to grab missions the moment they pop up, and sending its own staff out to back up the adventurers from start to finish. Aga still remembers that place, right after they crawled back from the Serpent's brutal defeat, and after every last bit of information was collected, yet the moment he tries to step inside, everything turns into a tangled mess. How far the word about Cross's crew had spread, and Aga refused to let the other adventurers turn him into a joke. He steps in wearing sunglasses, and right away a girl shows up to welcome him to the Far East Guild branch. Then he finally rolls up, welcomes them in, and heads straight for reception. Iga tells him it looks like this crew isn't some top-tier squad tied to the heroes group, more like a place where you can grab missions, chat with clients, recruit new members, and even buy all kinds of gear. He lets out a heavy sigh, then grabs a newspaper to find out what in the world is happening. After they dug into the breaking news, the brave heroes finally roll into a city, and Ega is left totally stranded, with no clue where to go. He tilts his head up, breaks into laughter, and practically tells himself, stop feeling that envy. He tore through the articles on Cross and the other big crews, then dug into the market excerpts for the magical ores that power the ships, 3 sources, in hand, thinking he'd wrap it up by handing it to Galcius, but he knew he still had to dig a little deeper into the whole situation. Next up is a monthly magazine built for adventurers. Every issue breaks down the best of the best, analyzes their feats, and ranks the top adventurers. The top 300 adventure groups in 9th place were the 5 Miracles, so they're guaranteed a top 10 spot. And when it came to the strongest players, Cross shot into the global rankings at 13th, after sitting at 40th before, so yeah, that's a massive jump. Emma's in 57th too, and honestly, she really was a true twin. She still owned it first, exactly as expected, a blade with no magic at all. Before long, someone shows up out of nowhere, demanding answers about Aga, because the royal court wants him. Right then, he finally blurts out why he had his sunglasses on, only for everything to go sideways and get under everyone's skin fast. Aga snaps at him to stop calling him that, and the heckler fires back, demanding why he's suddenly acting weird, since he and Cross used to be close. Aga clicks, remembering the truth. That guy was a classmate from Magic University, and the heckler standing there was him. Soon, every adventurer started whispering about Aga, because they'd heard he got expelled, and yeah, that was messed up. They all agreed this group was about to become something huge, but no, it couldn't be for that reason. It was really a kind of test, a selection, before they even headed toward the main city. Aga rips off his sunglasses, and the heckler blurts out, why'd you get expelled? But it never worked every time he got left in the dust, because yeah, he was the 6th person after all. All the adventurers burst into laughter at Aga, and no matter how many people pleaded for them to stop, it stayed true, and that was the worst part, because nobody wanted to look anyone in the face after everything that had happened. Aga couldn't get a single word out, and the heckler lined in, demanding to know if he was planning to bail early. Soon he shrugs off the whole guild thing like it's only for adventurers anyway, so Aga has nothing to do in that moment, until he slaps a label on her as an ex-adventurer, and that digs straight into the protagonist's nerves as he looks back. Then, boom, another woman suddenly shows up and demands they stop. She strides in like she owns the room, demanding, so, it really was Aga, right? That girl's blade was pure magic. She swung it and it sliced straight through the ground, and people whisper that she can command lightning like it's her own power. In the end, everybody falls for her, so yeah, that's how it ends. She was the #1 heroine everyone worshipped, and people couldn't believe she'd stepped in there begging, why are you even here? Why was the #1 even there in the first place? She swore it was just a coincidence. But then she lanes in and demands, so why were you out there in the Far East? Ega ends up blurting out that he's saying the same thing because the Far East doesn't exactly get hit with missions, and she admits, yeah, that's true, she's been tied up doing other jobs instead. Iga says yeah, sure, but even then she's still like. She's in that bikini armor and the girl straight up asks, so, you do like it? But it's not that he hates it, he just thinks she needs something with a little more protection. Then the girl bursts into laughter and fires back, this is what I'm showing off my muscles for. But the heckler cuts in, demanding to know why she showed up, because she came prepared to humiliate Aga, and that thought is just not fun, so the girl jerks her chin at Aga and says she did it on purpose. She'd heard he'd bylate on Cross's group, so the heckler's already convinced the girl is about to turn around and mock Iga. But nope, she flips the script and asks if Ego even wants to tag along with her. And suddenly everyone gets rocked with pure shock. The heckler cuts in front and tells her to wait, so why does the lone wolf, the girl who's picky as hell, want a loser like him anywhere near her team? She's even thinking about teaming up with Iga because she's kept to herself for so long, not many people can keep up with her style. But Iga might lowball himself all he wants because the truth is, he's got way more power than he realizes. Because honestly, he had the kind of mastery you only see when someone's mastered intermediate skills, and that talent was pure, rare gold. In the end, it's clear he's got hidden potential. Ega thinks she already knows all about him, but that's exactly why she pushed for them to team up. And she was saying it with dead serious conviction. And if Ega and her team link up, Ega will steamroll right through her, making sure she can't get in the way. As fun as it would have been. He swallows his nerves, takes a deep breath, and blurts out an apology, because now he's got something he has to do. For him, teaming up with number one isn't the real thrill. He's chasing the chance to make that place strong enough to stand guard against a Demon King level mission. Every adventurer is stunned. There's Iga, turning down the chance to be chosen as the top one heroine. She burst out laughing, basically saying, "There's nothing I need to do. I'm not trying to make people follow my way." Then Iga spoke up on the spot, "I really appreciate the offer, so yeah, it's fine." After that, she grabbed the magazine and checked her own ranking. Iga swears he figured she wouldn't be into that kind of thing, but then again, she totally is because the moment she got first, her excitement practically lit the room. She shows up just to check her own ranking, then drops a quick, "Bye for now," and leaves. The number one heroine wasn't just famous, she was a genuinely good heart through and through. Then Iga rockets straight onto the magic railway. Right there he hops onto the train, because the plans he's been itching to test are waiting, and now it's finally time to head back to his own territory. But first he had to lock down the Imperial City territory for himself and claim it the right way. Right then the Imperial City of Iga finally rolls in, and by the time it shows up, the sky is already fading into night. As he strides through the streets, he can't stop asking himself where he's supposed to end up. A letter in his hands told him to head straight to City Hall first, but he had no clue where it even was, so one of the people there finally stepped away to excuse herself and reach Iga. She urged him to slide to the side, and since she was basically clinging to him, he shot himself over in one huge move. Then she thanks him for it, and right then, Iga jolts in surprise. In his country, he almost never sees women in suits, and that government office feeling in the air is making him wonder if it's close by. He decides to shadow the woman straight to the Imperial City Hall, and boom, they strip his license because he's only there to rewrite the territory certificate. She gets why it happened, but she's not allowed to cover for it, so she calls up her own superior. Turns out the superior had to come handle those rights and territories, and right on cue the Lord rushes in apologizing for keeping him waiting, then introduces himself. "I'm the manager of the support department." Still, he can't do it without permission, so he'll go straight to his own superior. The manager brags that he runs the planning department, but he has zero permission. His boss does, so they drag Iga to the chief of the selected, and of course that boss can override too. Then Iga gets shoved to the department director, only for the same power play to hit again, leaving the whole thing hanging. Iga can't stop staring at the charts, confused about why the rankings keep climbing, like someone big or something huge is pushing them higher. Soon the director finally shows up, but he bowingly apologizes, and the great king is already back in the palace. So they tell him to swing by later with the application for the territory certificate, and right then they kick off the initial process. Iga pushes back and asks, "Can't we get it done today?" because he's itching to get it all started. And if he'd been stuck waiting all day and still walks out with nothing today, the director rushes over to apologize, but there's no way to locate the missing thing inside the building to pass it on. Right as tension spikes, someone comes up and blurts, "Why were you here in the first place?" Turns out it wasn't done yet. The minister thought his day was over, but he wasn't just anyone. He was the number 2 in the whole country. Once he finally gets the whole picture, the minister steps in and greets Aga with a grin, telling him it was him who brought down the serpent. But he just shuts it down. The minister tries to paint him as modest, yet if he's the one rewriting the territory certificate, he's demanding the work wrap up tomorrow morning. Then the minister steps in and offers Aga a ride, swearing he'll become the owner, and right after that, he orders Aga to stay in the palace for the day, because he plans to host him that very night. Inside the Far East Palace, Aga barges in and declares it's huge, before slipping out, leaving the weapons at the reception and welcoming everyone in right after. The food was absolutely delicious, and the minister kept dishing out kindness like it was second nature. While Aga ate and drank, he chatted with him, and after watching how smoothly the minister handled the city center mess, Aga walked away convinced this guy was not just capable, but genuinely friendly. Aga felt especially grateful to the minister because he drilled her on how to run the Far East Territory, an enormous patchwork of lands ruled by the Great King, the highest authority of it all. In the end, the Great King doesn't truly rule the lords, but somehow nobody can pin down any clear responsibility or slap on a real tax, so it ends up feeling almost like everyone's out there running their own show. The minister tells Edge, responsibility calls, you're going to the yearly Congress, but if you can't make it, if you've got a solid reason. This country has a seriously no-strings-attached policy, and it's giving people way more freedom than you'd expect. Then Aga blurts out that right now he's trying to carry out the territory's missions, and the minister hears it and goes, easy, no issues at all. Aga could do anything he wanted, and the minister bent over backward for him, until something hit that perfect deal. If rebellion even flickers in the air, Aga knows retaliation will hit instantly, and she definitely wasn't about to let that happen. He wants to beef up his own territory so it can crush monsters on its own, but since this is his very first time trying something like that, he's stuck trying to figure out how to talk to his own people. The minister shrugs and says, yeah, that's the plan, they'll spill it through the public news. Iga asks if people in the Far East really know how to read, and learns the language is mostly taught by local priests, yet only 10 to 29% can write, while most can still read, and it leaves Iga stuck in deep thought. Because he can't read or write the Far East's language, and that's a disaster waiting to happen, it'll trip up his rule at every turn, and the minister can't stop overthinking it. He could grab one of the secretaries and head into the city, and then Iga leaned in and asked what it was like doing something like that. The very next day, the certificate's name got swapped, 5 miraculous erased, and Iga's name stamped in its place. The mighty river handed him a bronze sword, proof of his rule, and right then and there, he seized ownership of the kingdom. The minister strides up to Aga, praising how dignified he looked before the great king. Then Aga can't believe it, because his nerves were still screaming. Then the minister tells him straight to the point, he's done enough for today, he should go rest at his own house before coming back. And then boom, at the minister's residence, it was all dressed in Western style. It's a gorgeous place and he can't stop loving it, though the minister insists Aga feels more at ease in that kind of setting. Aga isn't relaxed at all. That luxury only makes his nerves spike, and before long he blurts out, asking why he was invited to go to his house. Right after that, a woman slips in behind Aga and blurts out an apology. Then Aga just flings himself back with the full force of everything. The minister claims that woman is his secretary. Then Igarashi finally slips in and introduces herself, and Ega can't shake the feeling, because that's the same woman from yesterday. And honestly, she's over the moon to be working with him. Ega says the exact same thing, he's just as thrilled to team up with her. And right after, she cornered the minister and asked if he was talking about her the day before, and he confirmed it was exactly her. Since she's still young, she's already crushing her work, and with her skills, Aga's got a real future ahead. And if it really is okay, the minister just shrugs and says he's got his own reasons for pulling that kind of stunt. He claimed Aga was a real pro, bringing in top-notch people, telling them they'd grow into greatness, and that's exactly what the minister believed. Soon he shoots back, is there a problem? And Iga can't shake it, there's no way the minister is their enemy. On top of that, Igarashi just rolled in from the same city where Iga is the owner. Right after that, she should step in and help Aga stack up even more experience, and she reassures him, it's totally fine. Then he hops onto the train back home and tells everyone, this was my very first time in first class. Igarashi basically shows up right beside him, saying it only makes sense now that he's the owner of the land. She didn't give anyone an inch of space, just got in way too close, and by the end, she turned out to be downright bizarre. But there he was, moving like he'd just slipped into the shadows. Aga blurts out, is it true you're from that kingdom? And she nods, then Aga pushes, so when did you come to the Imperial City? She answers fast, she didn't wander in for fun, she came for the Imperial University. And right away, Aga demands, how old are you? She's 24, plain and simple, but the talk just won't catch a rhythm, and that awkward silence crushes Aga. Her face never shifts, still beautiful, but those eyes hit like a threat. In the end, you can tell she might have been sent to team up with Aga, and yet she refuses. A top university, a solid job, then she's shoved into being the secretary of some nobody like him, and suddenly she'd have to drag her life back to her homeland. Which was bad. Once Ego snapped his divine eye open, he couldn't stop wondering, was she the kind of woman who'd be tough to approach? But then it hit him, she wasn't just a woman in the crowd, she was the bride. Before long, she blurts, is something wrong? And Aga fires back, what kind of occupation was that? With these new, weird allies backing him up, it was time to harden his own territory, and he couldn't wait a second longer. Then Ega gets yanked into the spotlight when Galadius demands to know who that woman was. In the end, Ega finally introduced her to the new companion. Galcius gets it, but the second he tries to say hi, she shuts him down and won't even give him a handshake. During meals, she barely spoke a word, and when they played cards, she hovered in second place, quiet as a shadow. Then she convinced herself she'd end up completely hopeless. But she wore a stone-cold, dead-serious expression. Galcia thought she'd just met one of the strangest women on the planet, and he just couldn't stand her. Soon she steps up to Ega and asks what's going on. Then Ega blurts out his question and she tells him the truth. They've just arrived in the city. Ega tells everyone he has to renovate the place ASAP because that old hole from last time is still sitting there. Galcius blurts, "Can't we camp somewhere else right now? Because there's a woman with them at this very moment, and that means the family's gotta be close, so it's time to hunt them down." In the end, only Igarashi ends up blurting out an apology, because if Ega really thinks our interference would wreck her personal life, then yeah, everything spiraled fast and Yiga finally says she can't feel comfortable staying around them. But she insists she's good, so they end up camping outside for all that time. But Igarashi snapped that none of it was right. That place is his, no way he's sleeping anywhere else. Now that he's the new owner, he needs to lock in and protect his status, and soon she blurts out an apology for throwing him off like that. Then they start moving around the sanctuary grounds, and for now, that's exactly how he's getting around. And right then they should push forward, but soon he can't shake the thought, was she really that angry? She's climbing those stairs with pure calm and he's left scrambling, not knowing what to do. Two boys shuffle along in slippers because the whole place keeps dragging their minds back to the mountain lady. Soon Igarashi even points it out, saying, "They're right here." Iga gets fired up, and as the temple comes into view, the lord waiting there points out a young maiden nearby. So Igarashi steps forward and introduces herself, and the lord lights up with joy. And then he declares that she's finally a stunning beauty now, and that she should step in and become the new owner of that place. He tells them the sanctuary's priest has been tied to his family for 2 generations, until the very end, when that girl suddenly started acting completely out of place. The priest asks if the son should come back soon and whether he should call him to confirm everything, but she snaps, "Don't call him." Right after that, the boy shows up right behind them, explaining why Igarashi was there. Those aren't just any visitors, they're the kind that matter, and she's only there because she works for the new owner of the land. The kid gets totally lost, then Iga steps in and introduces himself, and in the next heartbeat, everything clicks and he finally gets what's going on. In the end, they threw him out, he was fired. The girl insists she wasn't fired at all. She volunteered to guide Iga because the minister was recruiting, and honestly, she doesn't even mind it. Then she snaps at the boy to get away from her, but he refuses to move. He'd barely come back from the damn work when Ega shot him a question. Was it the river near their village? The priest nodded and went, "Your son leads the deconstructors," and what he pulled off was truly incredible. But the boy insists it wasn't anything mind-blowing. Ega calls the work top tier, which means they're going to need a truly great leader, and I guarantee it all got started back when the rice fields had to be patched up, then they kept at it right up to today. Igarashi snaps with fury when she realizes her cousin's getting praised for all the wrong reasons, then storms up to Ega and calls him out for always tossing a crustacean around. But the boy blurts out that's how it all started when he was little. Then Igarashi admits it was him who smashed the statue's head. Just as the priest puts it all together, he hears the boy snap and expose Igarashi too, claiming she wet the bed until she turned 12. Galcias is totally grossed out, and in a flash Igarashi grabs Ega and snaps that she doesn't do stuff like that. Then Ega just sits there and insists that was only once, and the whole room breaks into non-stop laughter. Right then the boy finally clocked it. Ega wasn't just some kid, he was an adventurer, but the boy still thinks people like him can't possibly live up to their own hype, so he presses Ega and asks why. Those people didn't care about it at all, especially if it meant they'd be left scrambling for answers. And yeah, that was the truth. If Putin tangled with Galadius, there was no way he'd finish his mission. But Agar insists they just didn't get it. The training kicks off by lighting a fire in everyone's chest so they actually want to fight, because in a way that fighting spirit is like building a dam. You stack the drive, lock it in, and then everything holds. Those 7 villages in the territory all survive in their own way, like, one of them keeps getting crushed by the river's current, so they're forced to team up and build a dam together. If they can spell out the management in a way everyone finally gets, then the reason to fight, standing shoulder to solve the same problems other territories are dealing with, makes total sense, and the motivation will spread just as hard. The boy sees the logic, thinks maybe Agar is right, but he still asks, is there any way to pull it off? He nods and declares those monsters on the west side have to be wiped out. People started whispering about how the south side of the mountain was getting cleared. Monsters were everywhere, east and west, and if they can wipe them out for good, then everyone can finally live there in peace. And it'll open the door to building brand new structures, because with so many people fed up with how things are right now, he's convinced this chaos is packed with pure, unstoppable motivation. The boy insists most people can't fight, so how in the world would they beat those monsters? That's exactly why Eiga trains, specialized and ready for war. Those low-level monsters from the west weren't the only win. There was double experience waiting ahead, and with 2,500 people they could train, Iga promised to show him everything he learned in the miraculous squad, and soon they'd be ready to fight. No way 60 people can't handle every mission forever. Ego steps in, forms an org with villagers from around the region, and pushes to set the priorities for each village himself. Take that town where most folks are farmers. Once harvest season hits, they're basically stripped away. Meanwhile, the other kingdom can jump in only after the dam building gets pushed back, because they've still got to prep the land. Add in all the extra hands they can pull for missions, and the damage to the industry gets slashed as much as possible. But if they ignore the industry and don't keep it alive, they won't stand strong long-term. Iga kept talking way too long, barely catching his breath. Then he snapped into his next plan and demanded, "Can everyone lend me your strength right now?" That's exactly what Iga was about to say, until someone shoots up a hand. Igarashi was the one who pushed for answers about what Eiga actually does, and even Galshiasa chimed in, saying it's been forever since they last teamed up. So yeah, no backing out now, right? He says it's fine as long as it doesn't wreck their whole industry, and the boy agrees. That's when Iga gets pumped and blurts out. So by tomorrow, Gausius will tear into the territory's economy and investigate everything. The priest and his son have to step in as the go-between, carrying messages from Eiga straight to the people. While all this goes down, Igarashi steps in as Eiga's assistant and posts a clean, clear copy of the notice board for everyone to see. She couldn't contain her excitement about that job, and somehow it made everything feel fun. That rush hits Shio, and suddenly a memory snaps into place, quick, sharp, and impossible to ignore. It felt exactly like the early days of his old crew. We jump 3 years back to the past. Someone is shouting Yuri's name right into the night. "Where are you? Tell me you're okay, please." It was number one who snapped at him to answer fast, but the boy froze, and she erupted into a full command, screaming it to all the airs. Right now, number one is stuck in a city so hard to remember, it feels like you'd have to dig through years-old memories just to recall what happened. She wasn't worried about 3 years at all. Everything spiraled from there because she ended up breaking away from her own brother. I saw him once near that port, but when she asked around, nobody had a clue who he was. All they cared about was what the number one adventurer was doing there, surrounded by a crowd. Then they crowded around her, and before long, she was urgently asking everyone if they'd seen someone who looked just like her brother. But at that point, everything had started to feel exhausting. She just couldn't dig up a single useful thing. The only bright spot was that he finally got to find Ager again, and now she had to get right to what she needed to do. Still, life doesn't treat everyone kindly. She ended up spotting great opportunities everywhere, but she paused mid-move, because the real question was who she wanted most, and she went hunting for a totally new path to match that. And it's dead serious, her brother's stuck in the same kind of nightmare too. Then she shoots up and blurts that she's done postponing her missions. She's the number one swordswoman, and if she keeps moving, she'll find her brother, and everything's about to change. On the edge of a vast continent, a giant forest waits. She ends up flying straight into it. She figures that this has to be the place the guild folks were raving about, the kind of mission that sounds easy enough for her to handle some giant monsters. These monsters are freaking 3 times bigger than the usual ones, way stronger too, and even intermediate-ranked adventurers were warning everyone. They'd challenged one, got slammed, and they insisted a young guy was the one fighting it, but he didn't look like a fighter at all, more like he was just training, which was a terrible sign. Then she snapped into action. Those giant monsters were even bigger than they claimed, and that was a whole disaster waiting to explode. Soon, a blood-curdling scream tore through the air, and it sounded like an adventurer who might have gotten there before her. When she finally gets there, she spots a boy cutting loose on a colossal monster. Massive explosions erupted all around, and the chaos ripped her attention straight to it. This wasn't some ordinary kid. This was a boy with magic in his blood and a destiny waiting to explode. Those giant monsters aren't something you just knock down. After one brutal attack wave, sharp spears tore straight through the enemies, and the numbers got cut down fast. She wonders if a fire blast that huge will finally save him, but it doesn't last. Soon the boy runs out of strength and crashes down, sending everything clattering across the ground. She gets up and strides over, asking if he needs help, and the moment he really looks at her, it hits him. he instantly remembers his own brother. She can't stop wondering what's wrong with her, because even after 3 whole years, her brother should have grown way bigger by now, yet the faces don't look alike at all, and his hair color is totally different. And the boy blurts, "Who are you?" And before he can recover, she steps in and names herself as the #1 swordswoman, leaving him totally stunned. She was right, she'd heard someone was out there training for a mission, so she rushed in to help. Soon the shameless kid shot her a warning, yelling that she better stay away because that place was his prey, and he made sure to call her extremely annoying too. But right on his heels, something surged forward, so he snapped into an attack. The girl insisted it was her turn, but the boy quickly pushed back and demanded they wait. He's destined to become the world's one, until it all flips the moment he starts casting mad. A massive fireball detonates and shoves the huge monsters back, and #1 just stares in awe like, that was insane, top-tier explosive magic, ridiculously huge. But before long, she demands they pause, because if he dares to kick off that mission, the blast is going to catch him instead. But he blasts out his final explosion, which blasts a massive crater into the earth, all thanks to that kid covering the distance. So she drags him to some far-off place, determined to get that kid healed. And he stepped in to make sure everything that had to get done actually got done. Now that I see him, he doesn't even look like the young adventurer who judged me and wiped out the giant monster. He looks like a little girl, sound asleep. Soon he snaps awake and starts stroking her belly. Then #1 blurts out, asking if the boy really loves her belly that much. And just like that, he jolts awake, only to instantly blush, then scramble to his feet. She throws out an apology for what happened, then reassures him, don't worry about it. He's just a kid his age, so it doesn't feel weird, right up until he's told to go to that battle in bikini armor, and it suddenly definitely isn't normal. So they have to say goodbye for real, because the boy insists he needs to go back. So she leans in and asks, wait, don't you want to team up with me? She said yes, leak it until then, because once it's out, there's no going back. The boy shoots out an apology, but he insists he has to run back to the teacher, and then he says. He shows his teacher major respect, no questions asked. So yeah, he apologizes, but seriously, you don't have to stress about a thing. Right then another person pops up and asks her if she's #1, then he throws it back, saying he'll be #1 in the future, and when that time comes, he'll let her run missions with him. He was totally cheeky, but it was time to vanish, so he leaned in, grinned, and blurted out, bye. But then she drops one last tiny bombshell. If he doesn't get her name from the start, he'll never know who he really is, so if he lands at #1, he'll still be stuck wondering whether it was all true. Then he leans in and drops the bombshell. He's a dangerous mage named Moriel Extreme. Right then, Iga was on his turf, clocking every move and realizing Igarashi was insanely smart in everything she did, so when she finally thanked him, he just couldn't find the words to explain how far his West Side dreams could go. Thank God, though, he was happy she was right there with him. Then Iga ordered Igarashi to write up the bulletin boards for him. And then they drop one in every village, so the chiefs would finally hear about Iga and get why he was really trying to stir things up. But before that could happen, someone caught Iga's eye. She was the priest's son's wife, and she blurted an apology for barging in, but Iga had a delivery to make because the armaments had finally shown up. Iga demanded weapons and armor so he could outfit the units he was putting together with the chiefs, and before long he snapped at the lady to carry them to the room, only to hit a snag fast. Because the stash was huge for that room, and then, when the excitement hit, Iga started smashing through way more of them than he ever should have. He couldn't just dump all of that on the priest's family and walk away, so he was stuck, staring at the problem, with no idea what he was supposed to do next. Right then Igarashi snapped that Iga needed his very own mansion. Turns out he owned the place, and yeah, he badly needed a mansion, but he had no clue how to build it. Then the priest showed up and told him to talk straight with the village carpenters and the masters. Iga practically thanked the priest on the spot, then shot back, so how much is this gonna cost? Because yeah, it wouldn't be free. His retirement money had been a massive $22 million, but now he only had $12 million tucked in the bank and $3 million right in hand, totaling $15 billion, and the terrifying part. All of it was Gaoshia's fault. The priest finally leaned in and told us, if Iga can pay up right, we can wrap this fast, and because he'd just taken over that place, he declared it a proper loan and told us it was go time. Time to fire up the plans. His mansion wasn't just a dream anymore. Then boom, a whole month vanished in the blink of an eye. Iga insisted everything was totally fine. He decided to throw up a mansion in the south-central corner of the island, because staying near the monster's turf was the smartest move, since they'd be crushed soon anyway. The place wasn't finished yet, so Iga kept showing up now and then to check how the construction was coming along. And get this, some of the house was already built, and it blew his mind. normally. He'd walk into that dojo just to flop down on the floor and watch everything unfold right in front of him. Everything went quiet and he couldn't stop smiling, but now that silence was begging for him to put that construction to work. Right then, someone finally showed up. It was Chio who grabbed Ega's attention. Then she slid right up to him since they'd finally run into each other again after ages, and with her as a transport leader who lived off culture, Ega wasted no time before saying. So that's why she was hauling wood for his mansion, only for Chio to gasp when she realized that mansion was actually Ega's house. And yeah, she'd seen the same poster too, the one screaming that he was the new owner, pinned up on the bulletin boards. Ega had taken over as the new leader of the whole realm, and he demanded everyone unite to crush the Western monsters and build a better country. Those boards were plastered all over the center of the 7 villages. Chio was relieved she'd been tricked that way, and Ega even apologized. Then she stumbled on the truth about his plan to wipe out the monsters, and yep, it was exactly that. Ega told her he wanted her to fight too, because her talent was pure warrior-grade steel. She jolted back, blurting that she couldn't. There was no way she had any talent like that in her, because all she knew was teaching and hauling planks, and taking on monsters felt completely out of her leg. Yeah, every villager would probably freak out the same way if you told them they had some secret hidden talent, yet none of them would believe a word he said. Even if everyone teamed up, Chio still wouldn't do it, no way, not even in her wildest dream. Then Ega lined in and dropped an amazing idea. And he dragged her into the dojo and asked, straight up, if she knew the basics of awakening a talent. She just had to push herself and pull out her real form, and Ega could help others wake up too, so when he finally got the chance, it didn't take long before he went and used possession. Only shamans could pull off that kind of power. Once they had the right permissions, they could steer souls at will for a short stretch of time and distance. Ega couldn't do the real high-level version, though what she used was just a shaky imitation. Her soul could only shoot straight for the target, no clever turns. Still, that hit her with a rush of awakening, kicking her hidden abilities online fast and pushing her up toward intermediate levels depending on what she faced. When Ega took over someone with a warrior's talent like Chio, their body would start memorizing every martial art she used, style by style. Then Ega's soul would slip out of her body, and she'd drill those moves herself again and again until she was ready. He didn't just get lucky, this power hit harder than Ega ever expected, and it helped everyone awaken their abilities way sooner than they thought possible. But there were 2 brutal catches. Ega couldn't help anyone stronger than himself, so his power would eventually turn useless, and when he was in his possession state, those limitations kicked in hard. The target had to stay frozen in place, both of them needed a quiet spot, and above all, they had one rule that mattered most. The other person had to say yes, because nobody wanted to gamble with being claimed, or getting dragged into some creepy ghost thing nightmare. Ega, a total foreigner a moment ago, somehow got thrust into power as the lord of that place, and he and Chio rallied everyone to smash the monsters together. To anyone else, it would have sounded insane. Before she ever put her faith in Ega, she had to believe in the land that raised her, because the people there were packed with insane, unstoppable talent. And he was sure everyone had potential. She was the first to show the qualities he needed. Then he dropped to one knee and asked her to work with him. Chio chuckled through it, holding back just enough to keep the edge soft. Then she told him, "Since you're the new owner now, don't cower and beg like that." And just like that, she added that it'd be a real honor to team up with Ega. So she finally caved and agreed, while Ega braced herself, ready for possession. The second that possession brushed her skin, he snapped at her to shut up and stay silent. And fear suddenly crawled up her spine. Then she forced herself to believe it was going to be okay. Then right away, she felt something slip into her soul, flooding her from the inside like it was finally starting. And she erupted into a blood-curdling scream as the possession finally broke in. Breath held tight, she got asked what she felt and the words wouldn't come, so they helped her up slow and her body finally rose. Chio noticed her body moving a bit off, her chest felt heavy, the bandages pulled tight, and every breath came harder than it should, while Ego's thoughts buzzed in Chio's head. She tore up that apology and turned her full attention to the one thing that mattered, how she truly felt. Right after she landed a few punches, her mind snapped into memorization mode. Then he urged her to try it on herself. The first time she shouted, it came out half hilarious. She had to clamp her abs, plant her elbows, lock her hips, and then throw the punch. She started doing it again and again, like she couldn't stop. By the afternoon, they were absolutely wiped out, like their energy finally hit zero. Ega bragged about her strong muscles, but doubt still gnawed at her. Then it was finally time to test what she'd actually learned that day. After lining up the dummies in front of her and pounding through some training for a bit, she absolutely obliterated every single one of them with a single punch. And that lit up her whole world. saying she'd finally pulled it off. Ega then told her she couldn't stop, she had to keep practicing, no excuses. And she waved it off like everything was fine, then packed up to go, promising she'd check the letters later, because if this chaos kept up, she'd finally get to fight for real. Back home right then, Igarashi was right behind Eiga, and Galshia couldn't stop grinning. Yeah, he said Igarashi got back super late, but he swore he didn't do anything, and then he snapped at him to stop it. Soon after, Galshia's investigations dug up even more clues about Iga's territory. Suni leaned in and told Igarashi that her grandfather had just awakened magic. She admitted she hadn't been home in ages, so she honestly wasn't even sure what she'd find. Then they pushed off for the village to check things up close, and the old grandfather straight up thanked them for looking after his granddaughter, revealing that he was Igarashi's grandfather. At 62, he was the head of seed research. His own hands had been upgrading seed quality for years, and that grandfather was the reason life was producing at such a huge, unstoppable rate. His destined role was to be a producer, so he fit like a glove, and he helped shape those lands from the ground up. That's why, when Eiga used her fourth ability on him just a few days earlier, it was basically a power to trade memories, like when they pulled the old group into the mix as proof. On a mission, if just Cross, Eiga, and Tiana bring down the monster while everyone else is too sick to move, normally only the ones who fight would earn experience, but the second those three were marked with receivers, everything changes. They de-level up too, stacking experience even in their sleep, and they might even wake up with brand new spells learned overnight. This new ability let Eiga shape the territory itself, and it gave him the power to tag the most important people for combat jobs. The receiver would help them crank up their talents in a hurry, but right now there were only 3 people, and when the Lord's level climbed, production magic would finally awaken. Then the crops would diversify like crazy and future harvests would stop wobbling. Before long, he leaned in and asked the old man if anything felt off in his body. The old man just shook his head, nothing at all, like he'd expected. Ega knew they needed more experience or it would all feel pointless, and just as that doubt hit, Igarashi burst in and declared, "Now's the time." The 25 chosen were gathered on the spot. All right, here's the setup. The whole composition goes like this. 3 support mages, 3 healers, 10 attackers, 7 swordsmen, 2 archers, and 1 warrior. So yeah, they didn't recruit that many attack mages for fun. Even with the same pick, their talent didn't match, so later, they'll fuse their magic together to crank up the whole group's firepower. For now, everything hinged on these people, especially the 7 vanguard swordsmen who stood ready to carry the weight. Backed by the support mages, the 2 healers could master full healing later on and still keep healing with items in the meantime. Next came the archers, and if magic fusion really worked, it was them who would erase the monsters for good. Ega couldn't wait to see what Chio could pull off in a real fight. And on top of that, it chopped her transport capacity right when she switched this frequency. Ega pushed to crank the troop count up to 100 for the missions, and at the same time he stockpiled everything he'd need, food, supplies, and gear, to make it happen. Since Ego needed someone to help with the wood-carrying transport, he was fully counting on Chio to pull through right then. Then the training was about to kick off right there, deep in the forest. They tore off for the Western District. In the middle of all that chaos, the monsters were colossal, and survival felt almost impossible. Right away, Ega yelled for everyone to back up, then unleashed ice offensive magic like a blade of frost. They wiped out that monster right then and there, and everyone lost it because yeah, that's exactly what you'd expect from the boss who ran the place. Because of that blessing, those 25 people got double experience, and if they kept at it, they'd blow through the required levels faster than anyone could believe. Iga told them if you spot a monster, don't rush in, report it first. The crowd erupted in rage, demanding to know why. Everyone craved swords and magic, yet one of them had only one brutal gift, pure attack power. Out of all of them, only Chio had the power to pull that off because she'd trained for it. The rest were just as weak, and he refused to let them march straight into the monsters right now. Iga told everyone to stay calm, not to rush a monster head-on yet, and to trust that this was the moment to understand what was going on. Iga tore through every last monster in one go. It had been ages since he'd last felt real joy in a fight. So even if they were just low-level monsters, the whole thing still felt brand new and way too fun to ignore. After a long grind, their attacks finally started landing hard enough to matter, power surged, and they began to break through. And now he called on everyone to wipe the monsters out for good, and the whole crew was buzzing with excitement. They chose to throw themselves into the fight head-on, even if it made every step feel brutally hard. Still, a few of them pulled through anyway and crushed those monsters. And it lit a fire under everyone's excitement, just like Ega predicted. they could finally let the first one finish them off. Now it was all about the archers, no one was allowed to fall behind, and everyone scrambled to get out front, pushing to be first. Once one person hit success, the rest lit up with the belief, I can do this too, and if they stayed confident, they'd get results. And because they were locked in so hard, the moment to leave finally hit them. Still, some people wanted to chase a few more, because this was their shot to prove themselves, and the night bosses hit harder, way harder, and they just weren't ready for that. So Aga finally warned them. Chio had been wiping out even more monsters. Then one villager realized someone was missing and bolted, but that same guy was hunting for a fight, determined to kill at least one. Right behind him, a massive monster lunged forward. And everyone screamed for the protagonist, because the monster from that morning had come back, stronger than ever. That boy just got slammed in an attack, burnt all over, but somehow still breathing, so they rushed him to the healing mages, while the toad turned vicious and Aga started blasting magical mucus from its skin, swelling the defense power like crazy. Soon everyone begged Aga to save the day, but he slammed the brakes and said it wasn't time yet. Then he pushed them to take it on together. Chio snapped that her punches didn't even scratch them. Then she urged everyone to hit at once right now. First, they'd have to smash it at just the right moment, and the support mages in Aga would be the key to pulling it off. After that, the archers would launch their shots, every single one ready to fly. At the toad's vision, then the crowd of people, the trees. Those mages would cast spells he'd shown them, barely scratching the enemy, just to fool them into thinking the threat was right on top. Then it would have bared its belly, couldn't even push out the mucus, and that's when it was finally time for everyone to go all in and crush the monster lurking beneath the surface. Once it was done, the whole crew instantly caught fire with excitement. They were riding high on their own wins, and the teamwork was flawless. Then the young man started looking at himself until Iga snapped that with all this hard work, that's it. The training had still paid off. With everyone pushing together, everything snapped into place. Attacks surged overnight, and they kept stacking those gains day after day to get even stronger. And suddenly everyone burst into motion, throwing their arms up at once. That night, Igarashi's grandfather finally closed in, coming right up to him. Relief hit hard knowing they made it back alive. Then Igarashi's grandpa started shouting that he could do incredible things now, and because of that receiver, the battle experience from today even got passed to the old folks too, and yeah, Igarashi probably leveled up insanely fast. He channeled magical power into it, and when he pressed it onto that bald head, he could even kickstart a single strand of hair to grow right out of nowhere. Igarashi ended up yanking the old man back to safety himself, and honestly, that was badass, and once he had that power figured out, he could cash in on it later for whatever work he needed to get done. Next, Ega was in real torment, firing off questions like, what did I do wrong? Because it wasn't just random trouble, it was a horse that kept knocking him flat over and over. That black horse was the one the chief finally handed over to Ega, but in that job, the owner always has to keep his own horse ready for the territory. Then Igarashi stepped in and snapped that the horse wasn't acting friendly at all. It was unreal, and Ega needed someone to step up and carry the weight of responsibility. But in the end, that horse was straight up trouble. With the summer harvest occupation finally over, even with the territory still packed with raw power, everyone was buzzing about what was unfolding, and Ega snapped up over 50 more people. Suddenly, his subjugation team hit 75, and he was crushing it. Even with 75 people on the team, chaos still breaks through. Once they start hunting monsters solo, arguments flare up, and everything goes out of control when that horse throws him down, to the point that even the same guys can't ignore how exhausting it is. And just like that, the very same monsters surged back in, and before they could even blink, they got wiped out. With powers that were somehow stronger than before, everyone pushed past 700, and yeah, that was a huge win. The archers now surged to 800. Once you hit the first 25 members, it's straight up impressive, especially the support mages, who have already mastered a whole bunch of spells. One fighter's power skyrockets the whole team's defense, and the bigger the squad gets, the stronger the spell hits, plus, the longer it lasts, the more deadly it becomes. Chio, the one who leveled up the most by far, marched right up to Aga and asked, straight up, if he's utterly exhausted. Jira didn't hesitate, she made a move and left the rest to fate, and in the blink of an eye, her attack power skyrocketed from 120 to 1,256. They set out to scout the west side of the territory so they could grow stronger, so strong they could even outshine Aegean. Heading straight for the lower western territory. They strolled along with the old woman, and she suddenly bragged that it's been 50 long years since she rode a horse beside someone. She even claimed that out of nowhere there are 3 mountains, Hanyama, Kanyama, and Matyama. And the first one, the soil's so bad it's nearly useless. Nothing can really grow there until they finally show up and spot a cave right nearby. A wind blasted out from somewhere deep inside and kept roaring for a full hour. I pressed the ladies for answers, but she can only recall what the relative warned earlier. Don't get close, one wrong step and it could collapse. That cave has been sitting there for ages and Egga's already thinking, let's check later and see what's really going on. What? Just as they start heading back, Galcius shows up in a rush, shouting that a guest is lurking nearby. A swordsman was sent by the neighboring lord, right into the middle of it all. Galcia tells me we crossed paths by pure luck when he was out inspecting nearby cities. Turns out they were desperate for help in the end. Egga fires back, asking why the lord says the short ones are the ones who need his help, so we grabbed the sword. At the end of it all, it wasn't just a mission. It was the plan to wipe out the giant monkeys terrorizing their land. Lately, those wild rumors about the city finally slipped across the border, and the neighboring land's lord heard them and decided to send help. That wasn't just any mission, it was their very first expedition, and the stakes were already sky high. Iga mulled it over, then decided he'd swap the answers in 2 days, so the swordsman backed off, and before long they cornered Galcius, asking why he looked so damn thrilled. But in his eyes, striking up a friendly bond with the neighboring lord was the move, because that lord's power would come down to embargo and ship construction, and those missions are everything. If Aga can finally link the guild to them, then later he'll just need one more shot. If a bunch of adventurers ever shows up on that island and discovers the truth, it's going to turn into total chaos, and they'll have to grab that mission fast and finish first. Everyone knew it was guaranteed, but those giant monkeys are brutal to take down, and there wasn't a soul who didn't have that fear in their head. Giant monkeys are straight-up god-level monsters. Usually you get a whole horde of intermediate ones, so yeah, it's time we call them medium monkeys, because at our current pace they're going to take at least a year and a bit, maybe even longer. If they take that mission, it'll hit like a disaster, people can get hurt, and they might even take brutal losses. Right after that, Igarashi takes charge and tells Eiga to handle them himself. But he had no clue, so. A bright glint flashes in his head. Yeah, even if he's weaker than the last crew, he's still a solid mid-level adventurer, and that's exactly what Igarashi wanted you to understand. So he had to race back and report to the neighboring lord, then gather every last force, because that was their very first move. A few days later, they tore north through the territory. And just like that, they rolled into a whole new land of ships, where the population was a mind-blowing 50,000 times bigger than Iga's island. As soon as they stepped into the territory, the locals rolled out the red carpet and welcomed them in, saying the giant monkeys were wrecking everything, and that this plan was all about lending Iga his power. That castle was pure magic, the view was breathtaking, and the docks looked like works of art. So he asked on the spot if they wanted to build a steamship, and they absolutely said yes. But when they searched their own land, they came up empty, because the magical ore was insanely rare, packed with power, used to get that 3-inch steam visa, and it literally flows through the imperial city like magic blood. They had groundbreaking ship tech, and losing it felt like a gut punch. The very next day they started gathering, no delays, no hesitation. Lacing up and squaring his stance for a brutal showdown with the giant monkey. The transport team rolled in, and before long they'd be right there with Aga, so it was time to gear up and get ready to throw down. Yeah, that was their very first expedition, so they had to stay razor alert to every single thing happening around them. And they refused to let their spirit die. People were buzzing, talking nonstop. Aga demanded everyone respect him, but the second things get real, he just vanishes and gets lost, because if he's going to make it through the future, he's got to drill in those training lessons he clearly had in mind before. This isn't some someday rule, they've gotta obey right now, because fear from him won't make them stronger. So yeah, if they spot that giant monkey, don't rush in blind. Iga has to swing first, and if it's the medium ones, team up and take them down together. Now that everyone's strong, maybe they can finally leave the boss to themselves. But it was the kind of miracle that was never going to happen. A monkey drops from the sky and lands right behind him. And right after fear hits them, the monkey unleashes a full-throttle scream, like it's about to tear the sky in half. Even the monkey was medium-sized too, like the universe wouldn't give you a break. And then, finally, an order starts to creep into view. Iga steps in and tells everyone, stay calm, get ready. Panic spreads everywhere because of the sudden attacks, and on some days, it's like the monkeys literally explode out of nowhere. 8 monkeys total hold the territories, and the enemy's power gets scattered the moment they start sprinting off in every direction. So he took a breath, watched what was happening, and right after that, the whole group swept into the center. It's 75 of them versus just 8, so yeah, fear has no place here, because if they team up, they can wipe out one of those guys in seconds. And then he finally got everything ready. Then they burst in with everything they've got, and their massive expressions hit right as they come charging in. It was all about proving that hard work pays off, and then, just a while later, everyone starts charging at once. He kicked things off by tossing magic onto the monkeys. Then the swordsman launched a brutal attack and just like that, the defenders find themselves guarding the monkey stone as the attackers close in. And the archers unleash the final shot. They nailed it as a team, pure, unstoppable synergy. That pressure was coming at them from every direction. If they kept this up, the fight would be over in no time. Now Iga's crew had to split up, slip out from the group, and go straight at the boss. But something felt badly off, then even the horse refused to listen to Carlos's orders. So yeah, he was right there. And just like that, the giant monkey bursts into the scene. That giant monkey had already torn through 3 villages and slaughtered hundreds of people. And it felt like a giant mountain that had finally come alive. Its arms crashed like tsunamis, smashing everything ahead, while its mouth blasted a mysterious beam of blinding heat that tore through soldiers until even death came screaming. There was a giant monkey everyone stared at, while Iga fought it with everything he had. The final boss finally showed up, and the horse panicked out of pure fear. Iga slammed hard into the ground But the monkey stares straight at the horse, and the second the horse bolts, the monkey lunges after it with pure rage, leaving everyone in a whole mess. So Iga decides to crack out his accelerate ability. He's sprinting after them, clawing his way through the chaos. Then something felt seriously off, right as the horse slammed to a stop out of nowhere. And just like that, everyone started bombarding it with questions. What was going on? Maybe it had some kind of stomach ache or something, but right then, one look at the giant monkey's mouth told the whole story, because it was blasting out a terrifying surge of power. Ego came barreling in. If he pushes the employee for time and blasts the shield at maximum power. And just like that, when the monkey unleashes its power with everything the shield finally locks into place and keeps the people safe. But the moment it shatters, everyone rushes over and yells, "Are you okay?" And somehow they're all fine, especially the one who was right there up front, standing. Iga had his arm shattered clean through, and the pain was screaming in his bones. And somehow he kept everyone safe for a while, but he never saw that brutal injury coming. And just like that, he erupts into laughter. So he'd swear Cross could have handled it, yet none of them were anywhere near that giant monkey, meaning they couldn't do a thing about it. So Iga lunges forward, crashing into the fight like he's breaking under his own weakness. So everyone begs them to retreat, don't stick around there. They're grateful to Iga for the help, but the rest, hand it to the leader of these lands. Everyone sounds calm and sensible, but he's got one job first, save Iga. They can do it together, at least they'll do it together. But right then Igarashi says, "I was volunteering, and somehow, it's not what it seems." They don't have to fall back, Eigo's about to pull off something big. The monkey hurls a punch with pure, all in rage. And just like that, they start spiraling into the wrong way, completely getting lost. Then he pressed, what if something worse happened? But the monkey leans forward and panic snaps in fast. It's heartbreaking to see Eiga like this, and you can tell they're probably crushed about it. Then he decides it's time to prove something to that beginner monster. The skill of a solid intermediate adventurer, he met the monkey's strike head-on, threw everything he had into the block, and then his hand burst into glowing light. He unleashed intermediate fire magic and blasted the monkey with everything it had, trying to fight back in that instant, but it was already over. One hit landed straight in the face. And he tried to strike back, but the moment was already gone. Ego stayed right on its tail. He burst forward with full force, sword clutched tight, and drove the strike cleanly right onto the monkey's forehead. And ending it all with one final, crushing strike of his. Ega finally realizes he was meant to parade his lord for everyone to see, but there's absolutely no way he can pull it off. Everyone dropped to their knees before Ega, like the whole world just got commanded by him. Honestly, everyone felt that sting of disappointment right now, like, yeah, it landed exactly the way they feared. But the truth is, Ego was insanely strong, and once they started pushing the letters upward, Igarashi couldn't stop smiling because everything was finally going his way. After that brutal fight, they all agreed, let's hit the temple and celebrate everything that's been happening, because this moment can't be wasted, and thus. Ego stood on the bridge, claiming everyone looked cheerful because a party was going on, while Nikali and Galcius hunched over the documents for future business contracts. The pick team just got slammed with experience, because these monsters were way more valuable than anything in Aga's territory, and thanks to Cut's call, everyone's EXP got doubled, right down to the giant boss fight handled by the medics too. Chio's attack power shot up to a jaw-dropping 1,900, and that was the part everyone couldn't stop talking about. Their 25 chosen fighters crushed past 1,000 in attack power, spellwork doing the heavy lifting, yet not a single support mage learned the animate spell that boosts the archers by upping their skill and range, leaving them to win with distance angle tactics instead. Someday they'll get strong enough to stand on their own, even without Aga. They're still blown away by Aga's intermediate skill, even admitting they can understand a bit of it. Then right after that, Aga finally runs into the leader of those lands and straight up asks why he isn't down there partying with everyone. Turns out the truth is simpler. He wasn't missing the celebration at all, he was quietly appreciating Aga's help. He needed to rip the calm down there apart, so this outside style was the smart move, because the moment he spoke, meat suddenly caught on. The more he rules those lands, the better he gets to know Chio and everyone around her, because as the owner, all he can do is step back and watch them grow, step by wild step. And has to lead them through the right generation, linking the two. Then the guy there stares, gives Aga a big hi, and throws another one back like, yep, that's what it means to be an owner. A few days later, they tore back into Aga's lands, like the story was pulling them straight home. The Lord ushers him in and Aga bows to the priest, thanking him for holding everything down while he was gone. Then he finally shuts his eyes and rests as the priest confirms it's all finished. And he finally spotted his house in the distance, like a dream he could touch. That place was massive, like it was built for everyday life, so they dug into it, checked it out, and found a giant bed and this insane bathing setup that screamed luxury. Then it was time for Galcius to step in and hammer out everything with Aga, especially those ships. They decided to send 3 ships, each one built to carry 50 people, right away, and Galcius handled the dispatch of the crews so perfectly it felt unstoppable. Chances are it'll take them months to get here, and with harvest prep hitting at the end of summer, all they can do in the meantime is throw themselves into a fight. Aga had a mountain of work to smash through, yet someone out there kept staring at him from afar. Soon they head to a western cave and Aga starts grilling them. What do you think is inside? The family explains they work with engineering, so they're guessing based on what the cave looks like. The boy leans in and says it's weird, and they're all trying to investigate the cave they just got shown. Aga spotted some weird grooves in the ground and decided to inspect them. Meanwhile, the boy just shrugged and said he had no clue what that place was. And look, amateurs don't get to gamble with this. One wrong move could get someone killed. Even if the boy can try to build a defense, he has no idea if it'll actually hold, and Aga says he understands him. Anyway, the boy yells that they need to bolt right now, and they start talking about what's going on inside that cave. A bunch of people stared at them like they were about to witness something insane. So they grab their courage, bolt out of the cave, and tear back home. Igarashi ends up getting Aga because he suddenly blurts that someone's here, like his visitor has arrived. It was a woman, and Aga rushed back and apologized, begging her not to keep waiting. The girl flashes a warm smile and says it was an honor to meet them. Then she steps in to interview Aga. She's the reporter for the adventurer King ***, and when Aga demands to know why they're targeting him, she doesn't just smile, she quietly knows way more about him than he thinks. He stands 178 meters tall, weighs 80 kilos, and he's 27. He smokes cigarettes and used to be one of the 5 miracles, so even his full name carries that legacy. Now he's retired, owns the land, and leads his people to make sure the Great Monkey is secured. Iga leans in and asks, "How do you know so much about me?" Then she drops the truth, she's being called a fan of intermediate adventurers. After tea, they lean in and start swapping stories about her hobby, and it turns out she's the one who runs training sessions for beginner and intermediate adventurers. She genuinely cares more about average adventurers leveling up than about chasing famous high-level legends. Then, after a few pointed questions, she blurts out the truth. She's been a fan of Cross's group for 4 or 5 years. But she's only an intermediate adventurer, and once they start getting famous, you can bet her fire might start to fade. She decides to brace herself against Aga's wall, determined to see just how incredible his training skills really are. He could tell the group needed every move on the dot. She mapped each person's strengths, slotted them into place, and kept the whole team steady with pure management skill, and you only get that kind of long-range vision after years. Iga's training was drenched in love, flowing through everyone and dragging them higher and higher, and he's always right where he needs to be, stepping in at the perfect moment to give the group exactly what it needs. She finally clicks with Aga on a deeper level, and you can practically see how thrilled he is. And Aga can't shake the feeling that something's off, so Aga blurts that he can't match the group with the way his skills are. Useful or not, they won't help, until that woman snaps back and swears he's totally wrong. With Aga by their side, the hero's crew finally had a shot at climbing all the way to the top of the world. Aga finally denies it, yet somehow he's still grinning like he's totally thrilled with how it all turned out. Higurashi steps up and tells her it's time, and the woman shoots back asking if he's got anything else he has to do. Then he admits he still has to explore the territory and a few other things. All right, the interview was over. Now it was time to end it for good and bring her along with Eiga. So they agree this time they'll help each other. Eiga leans in and asks if she truly plans to write about the territory. Honestly, it's not that at all. Once that territory starts blowing up, everyone will know about it fast, so they've got to interview them right now. They storm into the western forest, right in the monster hunting zone, hunting for danger. And the girl lights up because that's exactly where his people train to level up, because these aren't just random recruits. They're the chosen ones with skills that already sit a step above beginner adventurers. They team up in groups of 6, backing each other like a unit, and with around 150 people all moving together, they're ready to take down the boss. And she knew she had to get this down on paper, because only with the public's stamp of approval would the guild recognize her and let her take an official mission. Since Eiga couldn't just claim they could slaughter monsters and needed to show up for a mission, the guild wouldn't let them in, so they had to win over public opinion and use the territory-by-territory missions instead. Once this hits a turning point, things get way more intense, and the guild won't be able to brush them off anymore, so that little interview might just be the push the territory needs. Eiga marched the girl through the entire area, showing her the safeguards of the Chosen, and revealing every mission going down around them. Things were starting to get dark, so he asked me if I wanted to head back to the mission and grab some rest, and right away she wondered if Eiga would be coming too. He said he couldn't afford to fall behind, because he had to build a solid reputation in every village, so he decided to link up with everyone and go check out the other places. She begged to tag along with Aga, and yeah, it played out exactly how she feared. While she sifted through data, confusion gnawed at her the whole time. That island was pure magic, a truly breathtaking paradise. He just stood there baffled. Yeah, he knew it was rude, but it still wouldn't leave his head. Eiga's power meant that land was once nothing but rural space, and that difference between East and the rest of the world had flipped everything. And if Eiga pushed into other corners, he'd probably try to bend them too, but honestly, nobody knows why he picked that place in the first place. She's a reporter, so she follows Eiga until she finally gets the whole situation. Then Eiga swears it's fine, and just like that they head to that place, with nothing even slightly wrong with her in that moment. But I've always trusted the power of truth, so I guess there are a few lands in my past I never really talked about. He sprinted back to the farthest island. The Lord swears that land was thriving. Back when he was a kid, the population didn't just slow down, it shrank day after day. Maybe it's because those rocky lands have zero industry, but that's still wild, because the reporter can't help asking who in the world could ever prosper out there. There's no village chief, just 4 battered families left, shrinking from 11 people to 8, then 4, and finally 9, and Eiga keeps going, introducing each family one by one. And then use the eyes of the gods. These kids are support mages, some geared for brutal attacks, others riding the front lines as vanguards and spearmen. Eiga swears they'll grow the village back, pushing themselves so hard that not a single day is lost to the risk of it disappearing. But the biggest family has 11 people, and they all decide to swing by to see what's going on. Then a lady greets them and warmly welcomes Eiga. He just took over that island and he's young, packed with talent, while she's fully ready to wipe out monsters, so that's why Eiga gets hit with a direct request. To drag that useless fool along with him. Akira was his name. And he was right there. The woman swears he's her brother, but he's never worked a day, and somehow he's bleeding money from everyone. That's when Eiga steps in, peeks around, and uncovers the miner's destined occupation hiding in plain sight. This job isn't for an adventurer at all. Night's already creeping in, so she tells them to huddle up and move fast, and the reporter just wants everyone to agree to stay. The kids started warming up to her fast. So there wasn't much left to do. Before long they pressed the priest for how he planned to leave, and he warned them that traveling at night is insanely dangerous, so everyone agreed to stay. They decide to throw a party and stuff themselves. Right then, Eiga clocks it. Akira isn't the chatty type, so he can't handle working with the whole village. But even if he was lazy, the guy still packed insane muscle. Also, that village was way richer than anyone ever guessed. The houses are huge, everyone's dressed to the nines, and the food comes in every flavor, so he can't help wondering what kind of life these people are living to pull that off. They team up with hunters up in the mountains and across nearby villages, then turn the prey they tracked, using those fangs and all into meat and fur, process it all, and sell it to the other towns, but back then, there were way more people. And that was the only ugly part. This business couldn't keep a huge community alive in that village, not the way things were going, and the woman kept juggling everything like crazy, with zero real certainty. But that didn't feel right. Something about it was totally off, like the air itself had changed. And the very next day, Eiga is going to dig into it, because when he wakes up, Akira is gone just like before, but this time Eiga can feel something is off. And just like that, the woman snaps awake. She blurts that the boy was digging a hole, and Eiga immediately demands to know what he was trying to bury. Nobody knows it, but he's just digging a hole, thinking he'll get something out of it all, so Eiga decides to tail the guy and find out what's really going on. As he followed, the boy hauled out his tools and started prepping to dig straight into that wall. And he started grabbing tool after tool, one after another, non-stop. The sound shifted and Eiga couldn't fully explain it, but he knew one thing. He swapped his tools and tuned the force to match every rock layer. He looked so professional that even a total amateur couldn't miss it. Even if he's insanely talented, nobody's going to need him if he keeps being useless. He's treated like trash, his own family doesn't even want him around, and there's nowhere left for him to go. Eiga looks back on it and realizes he's caught in the same mess, facing a situation that mirrors his own. He rushes up to the boy and asks if he wants a break, and panic hits. The kid drops his head, kneels down, and begs for forgiveness, but Eiga shrugs it off and tells him it's fine, adding that he's just awful at social stuff. Don't worry, Eiga suddenly swings a cigarette into his hands. And somehow they end up sharing a smoke, and the night turns electric. It had been ages since the boy lit up, so the moment he stopped smoking, he dove straight into alcohol instead. It had been ages since the boy even talked to anyone, and once the drinks started flowing, the walls dropped and he finally opened up, speaking his mind without holding back. And soon he sits down with Eiga and spills what she's really after, why he'd been asking about that village back then. Ego craved to know how everyone looked so prosperous. Then he remembered what his grandfather told him when he was still a little kid. So he slams his decision down and takes the only path that makes sense. A hole gaped in the wall like a warning sign no one could ignore. A cave, those grooves matched the western one. Back then, people hauled ore from there, but once the ores ran out, the mines went silent and the crowd thinned fast. So Igo was finally starting to get it. The boy had learned it from his own grandfather, but he didn't even know the name, and then he left that. A reporter got close, and he started talking like this ore was pure magic, like it could change everything. She tracked Ega because that's what real reporters do, chasing the truth no matter how wild it gets. Those magical ores weren't going to investigate themselves. Soon, they were trading requests to follow each other. And just like that, they head straight for a western cave. He explains it was once used for mining, all the stuff being crushed and processed for the real hunt, and he even hints there might be precious stones waiting inside. And that's exactly what they needed to hear, because starting that very month, the boy would report to Aga and start working for him. And they secretly pray that if they team up, everything might finally click, both of them working in perfect sync. They lock eyes, then slam their hands together in a solid handshake. Just like Aga, everyone agrees it was wild. The reporter raves about how brilliantly they communicated, how they spotted talents and worked with every kind of gift. But honestly, that's only the start, because the buried, massive potential hiding in that land is absolutely breathtaking. So he finally could start mining that magical ore, starting right now, and before long that spot would light up with attention from a whole crowd of people. The future looked massive, like it was already winning. The reporter asks if he doesn't want her covering the magic ore, and Aga snaps back that they haven't even started selling it officially yet, because the moment other countries catch wind, they'll come roaring in with attacks, and yeah, she's right, it's true, but it's also a massive scoop. And right there in his head, he was cooking up something way more exciting. He demanded to know what she thought, and now it was all about handling the territory from here on out. Those burning eyes were the same Aga everyone had been dying to admire. She smiles, tells her she'll write something incredible with that, and gives a heartfelt thanks for the help too. Then, like clockwork, she soon pushes Ega to take what she's about to hand over. Soon after, we hit the desert on a mission that spiraled out of control. Then a top-tier monster sub dropped 5 lizard men on us. And in that showdown, he and his crew tore through the whole crowd, winning over everyone. But here's the catch, now the fights were getting brutal, and they weren't slowing down. Even then, somehow, they still crushed every last monster. Deli and Cross managed to stay on their feet. But the nightmare wasn't over. More lizard men were closing in, and he still had to deal with them. And back behind them, stronger backup still stood ready, and even with their wounds, those support mages pushed on, because they could still step in and help everyone. AIMA gets straight up pissed, snaps that was awful, and the girls' blast magic would have hit in an instant. Talk over, their story ends there. Tiana quickly snaps, stop, and just like that, they're down to only the 4 of them, so now it's all about hunting the monsters. Open swore it was the truth, and promised that girl would come back for sure. They wouldn't be held back there, those days after that only fueled the fight. And Deli was getting his flowers like clockwork, right on schedule. After all those back-to-back missions, he should have been wiped out, yet he just keeps twisting his face like it's chewing glass, and then he storms off anyway. He finally realized either he was crazy good at it, or the heat was so brutal he couldn't get a word out. And while he was talking to him, he told him to remember, he's got to be careful with how he moves, because Deli is crazy popular with women, and that means every handshake and every action matters. If they keep cheering for him in those magazines, the whole world will finally take notice, and once the guild really locks in, they'll have a real shot at landing bigger high-level missions. He insists it's a sure thing, but the truth is, he's painfully shy. With Warrior vanishing out of nowhere, the guild definitely won't let those Demon King class missions slide, but getting there is a total headache, and now they've got nothing to show for it. They hit up a bar and crack open a few drinks to let loose. But when he finally arrived, a bunch of reporters swarmed the scene, grilling Emma and Deli, claiming they were with the 5 miracles, only to dig into the sudden disappearance and why Cross was scrambling to hide the truth. Those people are 100 times worse than anything he's dealing with right now, but Tiana had already told him, don't offend the reporters, don't say anything that'll turn this into a fight, just let it pass. They pushed to demand answers, why the sudden shift and what's being hidden, because even if the guild's disappearance already grabbed the public's attention, it'll only make things worse for the story the guild is trying to sell, and right then, Ima vanishes from there. And then she vanished. That reporter was a total menace, and honestly, Deli could handle the whole annoying crew. She was posted in the lobby, gearing up to talk to Tiana, who sat at a table lost in thought about what she should do next. Amos admits she's been totally crushed lately, says she could be hanging out with her anytime, while Deli's out there sprinting in circles. He demanded to know where Emma had already gone, yelling that she couldn't leave him drowning in worry like that, so Emma ends up yanking Deli's hair with full force. Telling him to shut up and stare straight at Tiana, no turning away. And the way she was acting right then, Cross came in fast, popping up beside her like, hey, hi. After their greeting, she leans in and tells him, you did an amazing job. Then Cross leans in and asks how it's going with the guild, and the answer hits like a punch, it's not good at all. They've already barred them from taking a Demon King class mission, and she confirms it like they all feared. For months they've been stuck in 9th place, and no matter how many top-tier missions they crush, Demon King jobs always get handed to teams that were in the top 7. So the guild can't bend the rules and slap a whirlpool mission onto a bunch sitting in 9th. To level up in 5 miracles, you need the best team, especially the right people, because the moment you've got them, the world starts watching. Even at such a young age, he already mastered the top-tier skills from level 6 all the way to the very peak, and they're saying this alone could drag the whole group down, costing them even a huge chunk of their attack power. Before long, Roberta suddenly recalls what the boy said and blurts out, why did you send Igo away? He's sobbing and everyone crowds in, begging the boy to calm down. Then when Cross tries to speak, the boy snaps back that it's selfish, and he doesn't care about any of that stuff anymore. Then he snaps out of it and decides to bail. Cross said it just like he feared. Leaving Ega was a total blunder, and everybody already knew it. But Tiana snaps at him, stop saying that. She said it was finally true, he couldn't keep up with the group anymore. And it was Cross's fault, and it was Iga's either, because the moment he could actually mess around was officially done. And right away they tell everyone to get out, right then and there, only Amos snaps, hold up, just a bit longer here. Right then, Cross leaned in and demanded to know if Tiana had really thought about what he'd said back then. She hesitated for a split second, then wondered if she could really pull off a date with Cross. And soon she tells them to put the next big adventure first, because this time is crucial for the boy and everything else that's about to explode around them. Not now, don't even go there. And then without warning, he rushes in and tears out a heartfelt apology. And then just like that, he slips out the door, waving off the night with a simple good night. Amma is left reeling and disappointed. Roberta acts all scatterbrained, and he never even clocks that Aga and Tiana are dating, so he blurts out, asking if it's actually serious. Tiana needs to drop the pass right now and head out with Cross, immediately. People swear your heart should settle for your second favorite, but Deli doesn't buy it, because happiness should come from the ones you truly love. Ama ends up going ballistic, snapping that Tiana didn't go with Aga, because, let's be real, Aga never would have brought her along in the first place. Aga dumped her, and he instantly knew he'd never be able to keep up with the group. Sooner or later, he'd fall behind, and deep down he figured that's exactly why he did it, because he knew Tiana would try to rope him in. And yeah, that was the truth. Tiana was a full-on problem. She even cashed the retirement money and used it to bury her tracks. She was supposed to be waiting for Aga to go with him, but Aga never caught on, not when Tiana stayed that blunt. Ama called it unforgivable, saying nobody was being honest, and Deli snapped back that even though Ama had a point. And honestly, she was head over heels for Ega. Not long after that, we shoot back to Iga's land. He was stuffing his bags when Galshias leaned in and demanded where he was headed. Then Igarashi grinned and said he was taking a vacation. Harvest season is here, so leveling up gets shoved aside for now. He's got to steal a belated summer vacation, because they've been grinding nonstop without a single break. Galshias asks if Aga's finally going to hunt for Maria, and that's exactly what he was about to do. Next, they rush to the port and Iga lays it out. He's handing everything to the priest and Igarashi, so they'd better stay locked in and calm. The priests corner Ega and demand he return before the autumn harvest festival, so he turns around and leaves. That kid vanished from the heroes group, and yeah, this is exactly what they earned after pushing Ego away in the end. The protagonist swears this can't be happening, and then the truth hits, Ego gets fired and everything changes. That was insanely funny, yet if that's the excuse they use to keep him, then it's downright sickening. Soon after, Iga can't stop thinking, what in the world is he supposed to do next? So we rewind a few years back when the whole team was just 3 people. Tiana, Cross, and Iga tracked down a rumor in that forbidden land, where people swore the legendary sword of adventurers was lying asleep. Mori asks if they're adventurers, and Iga flashes back on the promise that once he grows up, he'll be the strongest man on Earth. Then he blurts out that he wants in on their crew. Iga falls silent for a second, but then he shoots it down fast. Calling yourself the world's strongest is a little too much, and why would a cute girl like her want to become a man? Yeah, it's weirdly hard to put into words, until the folks back there start whining that Mori is just clinging to the adventurers and useless, like how is she supposed to become one when she's always shaking in the worst possible moments. Mori shrugs off girls as weak, claiming even when they get stronger they'll still never match men, and Aga refuses to buy it. Like Grieco, a girl climbing fast lately, so Aga decides to test her potential for real. It felt like a miracle had just ripped open the sky. That girl can snap up all 5 magical attributes at their highest level, and he could barely process what his own eyes were witnessing. Then Iga tells them, yeah, I can join, and you can't ignore it. She's not just confident, she's basically convinced she's the strongest of them all. Mori lit up at that and asked, so you're trying to get me to bring you into the group? But Tiana shot back that she was still just a kid. It was all about thinking outside the box, because in the end her hidden potential was the key to the group's future. Then Tiana presses her, are you really that good? And Agus wastes no time, saying, yes, and I'll take full responsibility, I'll teach you. So yeah, there's nothing left to worry about. Either she had to grow up a little, or she needed to pick a real path in life, because that age was way too young to be stuck in limbo. Iga knows exactly what's going on, but she insists talent needs a shot early, when her body and mind are still wide open to learning, and when training hard won't get derailed by anything ugly. Sure, he's not wrong, but adventurers' worlds are pure chaos, packed with geniuses who never actually make it out alive. Mori snaps at them to stop bickering, but Cross steps in immediately, telling him not to worry. If Ega said it was okay, then trust me, everything was totally fine. And Tiana always put her faith in Ega. Then, at the end, Ega pours out her gratitude to Roberta and immediately asks what Mori's name is, and she introduces herself. Iga shoots his hand up and says it's time to get ready to train. They'll start learning every day. Then she leans in and asks, so we're not using swords? And everyone answers that Iga's classes are super strict, and yeah, they're a bit perverted sometimes. Then they dive headfirst into non-stop training. Right now in Mori's hometown, Iga's roaming the streets and bragging that he doesn't care, but the moment he drops that line, he's already heard she's coming back to town. In the end, Iga dragged them to place after place. Surely they'd stumble on something. But even after all that running around, they still couldn't find a single trace of Mori. And he can't stop wondering where she vanished to, because the wind keeps biting colder and colder. And just like that, the clock struck time to head back to his city. Before Iga slid back into his own territory in the port city, he grabbed household utensils and a stack of magazines. On the ship, that little adventure supplement was his first stop. He couldn't wait to dive into it. There was a journal that marked Aga's fresh start. He popped up in a magazine as one of the 5 miracles, and once that spotlight hit, he started pulling off wild, unbelievable moves nobody could have predicted, diving into untapped potential across a land of impressive greats. Aga grins and blurts out, don't get it twisted, I'm not exactly bragging or anything. But he'll only read to drink it all in. But one thing hit him like a punch right there. Right in front of everyone, there was a picture of Cross and Tiana side by side, and Iga snapped, tossing the magazine to the floor, furious that whether they're dating or not has nothing to do with adventures. And yeah, maybe somebody saw how famous the two looked and decided they were there to soak it all in. Soon they'll disembark, and Iga can't stop thinking, like a beetle's gnawing inside his stomach. He doesn't know how to put an end to this rage anytime soon, until someone approaches and asks Iga if he's coming back again. It was that woman Iga splashed millions on, and he hadn't seen her in ages. But he looks crushed, like all hope just drained out of him. Soon she asks if he'd stay the night, and he admits the truth. He already blew every last coin on equipment, so yeah, he says yes. I slapped my card down and called it. But after what felt like forever, he finally burst through the door, so Galcius and Igarashi end up welcoming him right then. Eiga, thank you for keeping that place running while he was gone, though it looks like it still hasn't been found. Then he leans in and asks, so anything happened while I was gone? Turns out the miners had already started digging a brand new hole inside that cave they spotted earlier that day. He swears the western cave is too deadly to dig straight in, so he's hunting for new ways to mine without getting himself killed. And he starts thinking Ega, like, if he's honest, happiness is finally within reach because he's convinced he'll strike the magical ore, and that plan was totally his style all along. The boy pushed himself hard, and next time he should make sure to bring the best wine and tobacco. Now Igo's finally going to rest, but he needs to eat or take a bath first, and that's when Igarashi ends up stepping in to help them. And then he suddenly feels something seriously off. And before long, the guy's fear hits. He blurts that he's going to take a bath first, and Galcia fires back that Igarashi loves messing with him. But she spots the letter, he won it. And that's when Iga ditched everything and headed straight for his bath, saying it felt like a breath of fresh air that wiped out every ounce of travel fatigue, like the long trip never even happened. Then without hesitation, he hurls himself into the water and blurts out why Mori vanished. And if she'd been somewhere safe and cozy, I wouldn't have struggled like this. If I'd found her earlier, I never would have had to deal with that moment. He smashes into the water, snapping that she's a silly girl, and asking what's wrong with her. A real adventurer shouldn't act like this, so where the hell did her dream of becoming #1 in the world go? Thalia better unleash her fury next time, because if she doesn't, she'll end up being hated anyway. Maybe this is the one road that could lead him straight to the right future. He snapped again, started tormenting himself, and looked up just in time to see a crow cutting across the sky. He heads over, terror crawling up his spine, because he's sure someone's about to show up there. The world's deadliest adventurer, untouchable, unstoppable, feared by everyone. Man fires a question about what she's doing there, and she's totally blindsided. She never imagined she'd get caught right then. But it's all because of that. She slips something out of her shorts, strips without a care, then walks right up and greets those people like it's totally normal, got it. But she snatches a magazine from the column, right where a crazy story about Eiga grabs her attention. So yeah, by pure luck, she ended up trailing right there. Then she spotted what she needed and slipped back into her own city. She pours her heart into every word she writes, and that sincerity. It was real, but now she finally understands. After she rejected him, she decided, no doubt about it, this was exactly what she was going to do next. Ega blurted, "Why am I suddenly in your bath?" Then immediately shot back, "So, do you want me to peel off this armor?" Ega winds up in a full-on argument, swearing up and down that he'll genuinely want to do that kind of thing. Ega slips out of his bath and disappears, and starts panicking over what's going on. Igarashi's right there and he fires off, "What happened?" She tells him, "I've got a new guest," and then everything shifts. Right then, she hears a noise and snaps into action, deciding to check who's there. Then Ego blurts out that his gut's screaming something terrible is coming if Igarashi ever finds out what the #1 adventurer is up to. And he goes, "There's a cat here, watch, it just jumped right out of nowhere." Then he tells them, forget everything, first find out who the guest is and greet them ASAP. A villager, maybe the woman from that magazine, claims she's never seen anyone like this, and that's when Iga snaps into action, goes to check it out, and rushes over to apologize for the delay. But the one who showed up was Mari. He gets startled for a second, then it all clicks because the Gale somehow got what it needed through the magazine, so Mori basically can't mess this up. So yeah, it's time to follow the plan and lay into the girl. But he ends up patting her on the head, grinning like crazy because she's finally okay. But she blurts out a sincere apology for everything that went down. Later that night, Galcius runs into Mori and blurts out that she's seriously cute, and so. And get this, there was another guest, the #1 adventurer, and they just showed up a moment ago. And before she could breathe, Mari was right there, and she nearly jumped out of her skin. Then Eiga realizes, after they mess around for a while and the air gets suddenly tense, that they already know each other. The adventurer ends up clinging to Mori, and that's when Eiga snaps Igarashi's focus, pushing her to send that letter. And he's so confident, he swears this has to be right. In the end, they stick around for a few days, just so they can keep stuffing their faces there. It's been a few days since the top adventurer and Mori landed in Iga's territory, and Mori's loving every moment, no escape plan in sight. Turns out the adventurer likes the place too, so they end up teaming up, trading food and helping each other out like it's no big deal. Turns out the strongest guy in the whole land might also have a few screwballs floating around in his head. Everyone back then was already used to her. Then right after, Igarashi shows up, and that magic bulletin lands like a bomb, with a quick message under 20 words delivered on paper from somewhere far, far away. Finally made it there right on time. So the autumn harvest kicked off, and the whole territory erupted in fiery reds and glowing yellows. And the harvest festival was set to kick off the very next day, so before anyone could blink, the adventurer was already on top of the mountain, calling Eiga up there, right on time. If she was plotting something, she'd find out fast. When Eiga asks why he needs her help, he makes it clear he's not about to waste his time doing muscle training. She says it might be time to jump back into adventuring, but she's still got to visit too, so Eiga tells her to come back to real life, and she listens because that's the right move. Even with strength like hers, staying number one is brutal. If she starts slacking day after day, she'll fall fast, and that's why she agrees. He's right. So she decides to ask Avega for a favor. Can she bring Mori along with her? He'd already pictured this coming. Since she's number one in that world, she can pull that kid straight into high-level missions. Even at an even deeper Demon King level, and in the future. She even pictured herself as his wife, but he never imagined things would actually spiral that far. Then Eiga pauses, starts thinking hard, and tells her straight up, if you want to come with me, there's no reason for us to argue about it. But he says it's brutal. This isn't just skill, it's social standing, because she's an absolute monster with a blade, an exceptional magic swordsman, a terrifying fencing offense, and she can cut through enemies cleanly even during the boss fights. Her skills already let her play the offensive mage role like Mori, and she nails it solo, but she insists that if you add a second person, you can get it done in a flash. Even if she dives into tougher missions, she's still miles stronger than Mori, and that gap means she'll have to fight tooth and nail to fully grow using only her own skills. She needs to get it. She's been rejected too, so Mari needs even more love and care, but something tells me she's still missing the real point. Then she leans in and asks, can you give me a little time alone? Eiga finally turns to the editor's desk and insists that the number one in the world, who looks like she's fulfilled her own dreams, still carries a crushing sadness deep in her heart. Eiga claims there's nothing on earth better than. Then bam, the harvest festival finally hits, and everyone scrambles to get ready for it. The scenery is gorgeous and the shops are even better. This is the first time Mori will dive into that kind of Eastern region festival, so of course she's glowing with pure joy. At the end of it all, totally unfazed, the two slip back to the sanctuary. And boom, right there, the village chiefs fire up their conference, trading plans about wiping out the beasts in the west, all while the kids keep talking like crazy about it, and Eiga, they ask me straight up, did he really defeat them all? Tracking every little beast's move was a nightmare, so Galcius hurried over and told everyone to stay calm, thanks to the villages working in perfect sync, and just like that, the number of beasts crashed hard compared to before. And their forces kept swelling, so they needed to remember the moment they hauled that giant monkey, when the entire army was ready to quit. Even a boat got thrown into the mix. Now it was Iga's turn. The world-famous magazine just said it, this place is finally perfect, and it is. And if it all goes through, they'll march straight into the guild and talk their way into bigger missions, because once they succeed, their name is going to blow up across the entire world. Everyone's grinning about it. Soon Eiga pulls off something huge, and suddenly he's sparked the perfect motivation for all of them. Those meetings absolutely drain the life out of him. In the distance, Ego watched as Mori grinned and taught the kids the magics, killing the silence with roaring explosions and bursting fireworks. Eiga takes it all in, and honestly, that moment is pure magic. And right there he tells Mori the first lesson. Anastasio was the one who taught him to enchant, and how to turn that into pure magic power. No matter how many times you're reborn, every time you dive into learning magic with real excitement. He's ecstatic that Mori is finally learning and leveling up too. Back then, he'd grind through the night, straining his eyes, because elemental magic was never part of the lessons. When Mori hit 14, not 13, he stopped blurting out that he was going to become a man. And once every last magical skill was off the table, he had nothing left to teach, yet she still chased practice with lightning speed, every single chance she got. A Go couldn't possibly push back against that kind of sincerity. So yeah, he's gotta show him the ropes and teach him magic control like a full-on pro. Right then, almost immediately, Eiga's eyes lock onto Mori. She runs straight into his arms, and in the next breath he's like, wait, what happened? one of them tells him everything, and not only can she fly, it's a bamboo helicopter. Ega then shows the kids how to do it using only his hands, and the whole group lights up with pure joy. Mori pops up a moment later and says he just barely pulled it off in time, because if anyone knew, it'd shock the whole world, and so they end up walking. And the light kept vanishing, darker and darker with every passing breath. The festival was pure hype, so when the number one adventurer spoke up, she basically said, "Now I can finally tackle the Muscle Festival and use my strength to help the folks who need it most right now." So he glances over his shoulder, mumbles to himself, and says nothing, like the thing he needed to say burns too hot to share. But he swore he'd never go back, no exceptions. Not long after, Ega gets startled and tells the kid to listen, but he insists he'll stay put, because Ega is his master, so all that's left is teaching them. He finally breaks into laughter, saying, "I already know there's not much to teach," and then Ega admits he'd feel guilty for something like that, and he won't tell her to stay with the group either, but that's not what she wanted at all. Honestly, she was so kind that all he could do was appreciate it. Then he breaks down, starts crying, and begs her to listen right there. She wanted to be number one, so she stayed locked with the group, because that's the only way to level up fast and rack up tons of real experience. She asks if Ega's coming back, and he admits it, because he doesn't have anywhere else to go, he got tossed out too. He doesn't sink into self-pity, but it's way deeper than that. He'll do whatever he wants, just like the old days, then he'll swear she can stay exactly that way. But she snaps back, "It's not like that." Ega jolts, she's never seen herself do anything like this before, and blurts what just happened, after he fought for ages just to get a single word out. He stares at the girl like he's trying to find the right words, but nothing comes out, then she demands he forget it all. So they tear back home. Soon, she blurts out that the others might be furious with her for flaying. Ega tells her everything will be fine, right up until she apologizes, then he points and says, "Look." And sure enough, it was Tiana standing off in the distance, watching them come back. For a little while, they clench their teeth and hold back. But Ega lines in and tells her to move forward. And so Tiana barrels forward, ready to wrap the girl in a hug, while she blurts out a heartfelt apology for hiding all of it. And finally, she blurted out her apology. And Ega just keeps watching, eyes locked, like he's waiting for the next move. Before long, he turns to Igarashi and asks her to get him a bath, and since it's already way too late, they end up staying here for the whole night. Right then, Ega was locked inside his hall. Then Igarashi bursts in and warns them that everyone's been taking a bath. They thank him, and he tells them to stay put, just listen to the chaos of laughter and all the sounds that fill the air. Then somehow they end up clinking cups and sharing a drink. Ega the head leaned in, firing a question, "So you've always been like this?" The second she comes back. It's the heroine one, and she's drenched in sweat from head to toe. But it was a total mess. The festival felt impossible to navigate, and right now her stomach was screaming, so she asked, "Is there anything I can eat?" And right away, Ega tells them to tidy up a few things, then before long, Igarashi asks, "Everything all right?" And she blurts out that the bathroom's taken. And just like that, the number one is still here, yelling that a huge problem just hit, because the bathroom is packed and chaos is brewing. But somehow they cracked every problem and made it all work. The very next morning, Iga pops awake and greets the day with a bright, "Good morning." And there right by the window was Tiana, staring out like she already knew something was coming. She suddenly clocks it and blurts out, "Good morning, Fel." Plops down on the couch like it's his throne. The room goes dead silent as Ega says she'll brew some black tea, even though the sugar jar's basically empty. Then she tells him, "Just wait." She's crushed by what happened, and Ega tells her, "Don't worry, you've got nothing to regret." Not long after, she blurts out that she's already read the tale the Kings of Adventurers put out in their magazine. And honestly, his heart burned with a need for adventure. Ego blurts out an apology, insisting he's nothing like the retiree she knows. Then he shrugs like, maybe that kind of difference is totally normal. And he even claims he read that publication about himself, but that's not what he meant at all. He just wanted to know what everyone else would say about his achievements, and soon after, Ega jumps in and says they're running into serious trouble. He read the news about them, and turns out those reporters weren't exactly built for adventures, yet they still acted like that, while she swore she only reads stuff that helps her at work. And it finally clicks, he gets it. Before long, the rest of them show up too, and as the night drags on, they keep falling asleep more and more. So yeah, they end up grouping up like that. Ega slips a look at everyone from afar, then decides, all right, let's get out of here. The port was jam-packed with people, and all that noise stretched out into the distance. Galshia leans in and blurts out, "Ega, are you sad?" And so the crowd starts thinning. One by one, people peel out and vanish. But Ega spots something right away. So he sprints over to grab Tiana's attention, and when she glances back, her face lights up with pure happiness. Then Iga quickly orders her to tell Cross one thing: he'll find his own path to the Holy Land. And he had to stand there waiting for him to show up. Tiana gets crushed because the one person he cares about most is always snapping at him. And just like that, the number one heroine shot off into the distance, and the house fell silent once more. But nope, that can't be said. If the mansion gets too busy, he'll have to hire a maid, and that's what's got Ego shaking while he frantically recruits people, because he's also remembering something important. The ship is almost ready for them, and next week 3 boats will be ready to carry people. So yeah, that means the wild adventures abroad aren't just coming, they're already underway. But the real headache is adventurer certification, and the expedition's travel costs would wreck your wallet. Right then, the miner bursts into the scene. And that freaks everyone out because he's filthy, so he blurts what's going on. And then boom, he finally tells them they pulled it off. They finally cracked it. Turns out the magic ore was real, and that meant the territory could start exporting magic ores for real. Then Ega blasts everyone with illumination magic, and it turns out that spirit ring deep in Minning Fire is off limits. So that glow feels like a taboo, yet he's doing it anyway, because he's determined to light the way for all of them. They storm ahead, refusing to look back. And from far away, they look like tiny little hills just waiting to be discovered. But then something shifts right as Igarashi closes in, and she wears a face full of trouble. Eiga asks if she needs the bathroom, but before she can even finish, it's obvious that's not what this is about. This whole thing got messy fast, and now the women are going to bathe, because at this point it was inevitable. This kind of problem is an adventure in its own right, serious stuff, because men can make bushes whenever they want, but women can't. So every now and then you get an absolute legendary female adventurer, urinary continence and all. Another shy girl guards her pride like treasure, then quietly buries her delicate struggles, trying to act like she can handle it all. And after all that chaos, the entire group is struggling to find the words to speak. So nobody has to go through that tragedy again. Everyone has to find the courage to speak up and make sure the journey stays safe and smooth. But when Igarashi shows up, it doesn't look like she's even got it in her hands. Maybe her nerves are screaming, but she shakes her head and insists it's not that at all. That fear hit harder than most, and before long people started asking, who is Galcius? But he kept getting slammed by elemental monsters everywhere. And that's when Eiga decides to sprint in and help him, because with spiritual power, he thought those spirits were already under control, but there's still one last thing lurking. Eiga nearly blurts out that he's about to fight, but Igarashi grabs him and shuts him down. And he blurts what's going on, and she snaps back, I don't buy in ghosts, that was just made up. And so, ghost monsters get scary fast when human fear feeds them, yet the miner stays alive, not because he's some spiritual powerhouse, but because he's locked in on the job and ignores everything else. And now this thing is creeping closer, sucking Igarashi's energy dry. But Eiga begs her not to panic, he won't wipe out the light yet, so she turns to him and tells him to do it. Soon Galcius demands answers. How's he supposed to strike a monster with no entity? But Eiga warns that if he uses fire to burn them in that cave, he'll be doing something truly monstrous, and Eiga will hold. And with that, he unleashes his spiritual power like a lightning strike. And that's when everything finally clicked, mission accomplished. The spell now resembles what the priests of the church wielded, an insanely calm elemental technique, because he's mastered every intermediate spell, and even those low-level caves felt unmatched right up until it turned out he's useless at high levels. So now they can push even farther, no more dwelling on what he said back at the start, when he first went probing that mind and realized he was terrified of spirits. But once Eiga starts seeing them as monsters, the fear finally dies off, so they don't seem scary anymore. So yeah, Eiga was an honest-to-goodness adventurer, at least that's what he tried to convince himself, and then, not long after, he started walking around a ton. They finally stumbled onto something wild, magical, or hidden in a mine, right there, like fate put it in their hands. A massive stone just sat there, and everyone's eyes snapped to it instantly. And just like that, they start getting everything ready. Counting on the miner right there, right now, who finally kicks into gear and unleashes his marmot skills to grab the biggest stones. Not long after, Eiga wastes no time and asks, right there. Ever since when did he pick up those skills? He can't even remember it clearly, because lately, all 75 people on the selection team have been grinding hard, and the power from that experience has been passed down to the junior who got flagged with the receiver skill. If they're about to kick off an overseas adventure, they're racking up a ton of experience points, and Eiga can't stop wondering how much Destined will jack up the miner's level back home, while Galcius is grinning like crazy, thrilled over the ore they've still got. And yep, this magical ore is still giving off this insane aura, so if he can land a negotiation, he could walk away with a fortune. But before any of that happens, nobody is out here trying to sell magical ore, so Galtius steps in and demands why. If they keep selling the ores the same rough way, that land is doomed and Galadius knows it. Without proper ores, the village dies, so what they have right now isn't running out. Those magical ores didn't just sit there, they got used the right way, and they actually made a real difference. I'll handle the smaller goods first, get them moving in the trade, and once they're sold, we'll rake in way more than before. People will scramble to grab what they can't make themselves, then try to buy it cheap for a good price, because this is nothing but ore being sold. If they're pushed, they'll have to dump it for even less, and the whole territory's heritage gets sold off piece by piece, making it brutal to do business there. Right after that, Igarashi bursts in and announces, Eiga got a letter. Soon they press for the name. Where did this come from? The Adventurers Guild, comes the answer. He can't stop wondering what's going on right now. They tore open the letter and my heart pounded because it finally said, Igarashi wants to know what happened. Then Eiga leaned in and told them, starting right now, the guild officially recognizes you. And they got their hands on the Adventurer certificate. And starting today, right there in that territory, he's stepping up as a full-on adventurer. Right then and there, they blasted every detail on screen for everyone to see, and boom, certification was officially completed. A swordsman, an archer, a mage, a support, then another archer steps up, and to top it all off, a boxer is in the mix too. 6 people bid the selective team goodbye and marched into the palace for the territory's adventure organization's first big meeting, though the group's name still makes Eiga's ears go hot with embarrassment. Soon after, they start grilling him on what those labels even mean, because once you're in the recruit tier, you can climb to intermediate, then push into the high ranks, and finally reach the senior level. Reach the top classification, and the Adventurers Organization headquarters will invite you personally. Then you'll be handed a high-ranking mission. That was Eiga's biggest target for later, and for now they could shove it aside. Then they immediately asked if anyone knew the real perks of earning an Adventurer's certification. One of the boys shot his hand up, claiming it was all about looking cool, and he was totally, wildly wrong. Soon the girl blurts out that once they finish the guild's missions and build it up, they'll finally be able to travel to those places. Man, that's huge. Those places mean everything to them, because their homes can be forests, dungeons, towers, ruins, or wild regions where special beasts roam, far away from modern civilization, so they stay completely cut off. So they'll roll in with a full 150-person strike team. Then the whole crew will split up as each leader steps forward to command squads of 25. Everybody freaks out about that. They all froze in shock, baffled, because the second they heard something like that, it felt like the reason would never make sense. But this group isn't like the rest, it's packed, and because of that, if they truly cooperate, they'll hit way harder than anyone expects. I just hope everyone steps up, because if Iga's disciples push together, they'll grow into monsters. A week later, they finally hauled in those massive wooden boats like it was a victory landing. And just like that, Eiga practically exploded with excitement. The Lord says he hopes the man sails with safe waters and wins big, and Eiga quickly thanks him, promising he'll handle those 3 ships with extreme care. No need to worry, because they're built like tanks, and that guy is so cautious he practically scares bad luck off the deck, and on top of it all, he's friendly too. Next, the Lord tells Eiga he won't have to wrestle with steering the ship or handling any sea trouble. He can just hand it over to his subordinates. Right after that, we're supposed to finally introduce ourselves, and I really hope we come out saying how incredibly grateful we are for Iga's help. It was that man who begged for help with the giant monkey, and before long, they'd ship the samurai leader and his 3 men to serve Eiga, then roll in a crew of battle-tested sailors to back them up. Man asks the Lord, can I mobilize both the commanders and the sailors? And the Lord snaps back that all they want is to smash that beast, because the people in the territory are already buzzing with excitement. With everyone a little flustered, the samurai just step back and let Eiga take over, though I really hope he levels up and turns those skills into something everyone can't stop expecting. And that's exactly what the Lord was thinking, because he had the same thought as me, Mandarin, right there in the capital. So they had big plans mapped out, and still, deep down, they had to trust it would work. Then it was crunch time. Everyone rolled up their sleeves, making flags with their own hands, pouring out thanks, and begging the heroes to bring them back safely and carefully. So the swordsman charges right toward us. Saying those 150 members were already on board, everything was flawless. Then Eiga bursts in and tells them it's time to go. A crew of 150 people tore off from the eastern pole, and now they're headed straight toward a familiar, traditional land. It was a dense stretch of towering trees and wild forest, packed with beginner-friendly dungeon exploration missions just waiting for new adventurers. And yeah, there are tons of villages and big cities where merchants pop up all the time, and that made the whole place a total magnet for adventurers. The last time Iga teamed up in a two-person squad, they were barely scraping by, now they're hanging by a thread. They'd better guard every coin on the road, because one wrong move and it's gone. A loud knock slams the door and Iga blurts, "Come in." The swordsmen burst in, shouting that they'll reach the first city in half an hour. Iga thanks, but Iga quickly tells the guy to wait up. When the ship finally dropped anchor, he didn't waste a second. He called out 3 people to come with him, and they all wanted to throw a little celebration to lift the mood. One guy even said it was an honor to be invited by Iga like that, and he thanked him because he'd head out right away. They rush into the port, manage to land right there, and just like that, this city feels tailor-made for them. Igarashi was like, "That's awesome," because the place looked insanely beautiful, packed with traders everywhere. Meanwhile, Gauchia was claiming they could tell this city was wildly well-developed just by how it buzzed. Iga yells for everyone to line up because he gives them just 10 minutes to line up, and if one person moves slow, the whole team gets dragged. Some folks even swear they'd rather be having a picnic at school. From here until nightfall, they're done with work, free as can be, but they're not allowed to touch a single coin. Next, Galshias and Igarashi need to come too. The others will roll in soon. As soon as they arrive, they start peppering him with questions about what Eigo's doing, and he says he's heading straight to the guild to lock down a few final details before they start operating. Right after that, someone slipped into the shadows and watched from afar, and you could tell they were loving every second. Eiga barrels into the Adventurers Guild to get his license checked, slides his license across the desk, and then they verify who he is. He breaks down how the surrounding monsters tick. If they're only at that basic intermediate level, the team can crush them, and if they move in sync, the box is just a 10% problem, until the real danger hits. The boss might spawn the second someone goes to touch Eiga. He whips his head around in a flash, yet the street's empty. Then he insists it's better to head back to Galadius. Right at that same moment, the person finally manages to snatch something. Then they storm into the food court, ready to dig in. Everyone was absolutely thrilled when that party invite finally landed in their hands. And right away, Galshia blurts that maybe, just maybe, he can jump in and help fast. But one guest still hadn't shown up. He'd promised he'd be late, so they shrugged, started eating, and waited for him to finally make his entrance. The food was absolutely perfect. Agus says that when he was younger, he'd bring everyone to that restaurant so they could pig out however they wanted. The beer was straight up amazing, and half the dishes were things they'd never even heard of before. And that food was pure perfection, like instantly addicting. While Iga went to check everything with his magic, he found them. One was a carpenter and the other was a blacksmith. So yeah, they're not the sword and brawl kind of people. Their real power is in their logic, and it's razor sharp. Meanwhile, he whips his head back. Ms. Igarashi wasn't about to touch her food. She braced herself for poison in the food, then shook it off, and before fear could catch her, she shoved the sausage full of everything and devoured it in one reckless bite. But he can't even take a bite, so pretty soon he grabs her attention and begs her to try the mashed potatoes. And then she thrusts the sausage into his hands. Satisfied at last, he set the whole meal on his own tab. But then Iga's wallet vanished, and panic hit everyone as they frantically wondered what to do next. Soon Iga climbs up onto the table and demands, "So, is it finally time to pay already?" Nope, and then a stranger crawls out of the wall, straight up asking if he even noticed. It was a woman standing there, and the moment she looked at Iga, she clocked his razor-sharp eyes. This wasn't some random guy. He'd once been a full-on professional adventurer, and yeah, she was a ninja too, so. She wondered if Iga could become her master, and that tiny test was meant to see if he had the skills. It ended up pissing off the entire gang, big time, but before long, she'd turned into their ally. Iga snaps that she never intended to kill at all. She had one clear motive. There was no way she'd do anything like that. And yeah, she'd been tailing them since they were still on the ship, which is why they start believing she's actually an ally. Not long after, the woman admits she was caught right through, and begs him to feel free to give her orders, while the outfit, with its ninja look, leaves everyone stunned in awe. But if the way she did it is a laugh to her, then Iga better lock in and watch everything, because she can't afford to miss a thing. The next morning, they stormed straight into the mission territory deep in the forest. The forest dripped with killing intent, making every tree stand rigid and twitchy. On a bright afternoon, not even the sun dared to break through, like some giant demon had cracked open its jaws and beckoned everyone inside. Which made my blood run cold. The first time he stepped to the list, pure terror hit him. Iga could swear he was trembling in front of her. Now right then he was surrounded, packed to the brim with people. with over 150 members. So that was the adventure crew that nearly got wiped out. Now it was time to throw down and fight for real. To level up all 150 members they'd personally guided, they rushed into the city's hidden mystery, an unknown forest dungeon packed with monsters they'd already been fighting up to that point. They'll split everyone into squads of 25, pack each squad into a straight line, and fight just as the groups, 25 strong, were divided. And yeah, you can't just assume there's room for 150 people. If they start fighting inside those spots, it'll turn into a nightmare, because the cave is already about to become miserable for them, and if bigger, heavier monsters crash the fight, it's going to get ugly fast. Everyone starts gearing up, and right there, everyone's already ready for it. On day one, every single group marches into the forest and has to fight at least once. They push for go all at once, but they say, nah, we'll start tomorrow, because they want to test how well each team performs once the groups start working together. Now it's time to form the first one, and once it's done, they can finally move forward. As they keep moving, there's one more bombshell reason behind Iga's move. To melt sure, he made absolutely everyone ready to throw down and fight. Before long, they demand the group leader hold up a low lantern, and just like that, each person gets their turn. But if it's too bright, you'll trigger a whole mess, because then the group can spot everyone's location at once, so they have to push forward carefully, ready for whatever could go wrong. Now she could finally use the search, and the moment the enemy's trail lit up on screen, a green shoulder frame pops into view. And just like that, everybody panics, so Aga steps in and orders everyone to shut it down. If they don't, the enemy will swoop in and separate them, but now they've got a chance to ready themselves for an attack. The strongest crew is on support magic. Aga's got her search ready too, and with their hands up, the enemy will know exactly what's coming. Now the mages could whip up a tiny fire, but they had to hold it back since they weren't ready to unleash it yet, and they sent word using arrows with weaker weapons to keep things under control. After they crack open the archives, they snap, and then they start attacking everyone all at once. They demanded to know how many hits the crowd could land, and the group somehow went wild, smashing attack after attack, even though most of them weren't that experienced. The real reason they crushed it was their leader's flawless magic support. Right then, the fireballs surged forward with everything they had, and the monsters started crumpling to the ground, one after another. Anyone still standing wouldn't last, they'd get wiped out. And once the X-Sword finally landed, it was over, everything was done. They finally beat a monster bigger than anything they'd faced, and now adrenaline is screaming that the next fight is about to hit hard. The monsters tossed him 20 silver arrows like it was their last shot. And now it hits them, this was insane luck. The monsters would have gobbled up anything nearby, so they had to make sure they still gave themselves a shot to land several items before the chaos swallowed them. That's when the boss turns into a full-on monster and starts dropping the most valuable loot you could ever dream of. So the whole group jumps back into training for the next battles. Then boom, monsters storm out in front of them, and when a few of them start burning through magic power, they finally falter. After their first expedition wrapped up, they walked away with 10 silver arrows, a gold bracelet, and 15 titanium pieces, straight up a killer haul, and now they're set to become arbiters, earning big money off it. So yeah, they team up with the second group instead. And it happens again, only this time the second group absolutely skyrockets, turning the fight into a massive win. And everyone's eyes were locked on him, like the whole world was holding its breath. Their leader's raw strength hit like a surge of power, and it pushed everyone to rise up and get way better. So they couldn't tap into search the way the last group did. So the vanguard has to slam into the enemy first, then they'll take over, right there in the thick of it, while archers and mages hang back and fire support from the rear, and the toughest part to pull off every time was that they hauled in a copper lamp and 15 iron nails, and just like that, everyone's mood shot upward. People couldn't stop buzzing with excitement. Ega starts seeing that group's leader like a mother, and it instantly melts the whole atmosphere. Everyone around feels that warm shift. Before long, we stumbled into the third group, where everyone was staring hard at the monsters, and right ahead, 2 red goblins waited. They were chewing on dead bodies and even grabbing some monkeys too. Then, somehow, they looked like they could keep going a bit more, like, okay, I guess I want a better life now. That life looked insanely good, and she didn't need light to see through all that darkness. Soon, he leaned in and asked if she could strike the vitals, because that would give them a much better shot. Right then, she decided that was the move, she'd go for it, and the special gear she had, it was made exactly for moments like this. And with everything she's got, she blasts the monster down. Crack right in a vital spot, and the second it lands, they burst into screams. Ega snaps to it instantly, realizing they look lifeless for that split second. Right after that, she grins and promises she'll show the monsters next. then she launches out of the trees like a blur, powered by special gear that's basically just a skirt built to boost her mobility. So he handed out those special tools because the whole crew wasn't trained enough, they were barely standing, and they needed real gear fast. Then she warned, 2 o'clock, there's a monster, and the moment that hit, they couldn't stop thinking about it. Unlike the red goblins, these tree monsters don't have a weak spot. You can't drop them with one shot, so she blurted out that the monsters were overrunning their lines, and then Aga shouted for everyone to strike back, while the other archers and mages swept the sights and picked targets too. And then bam, those different lines lit up on the screen one after another. None of them pulled off any dangerous attacks, but the group leader's arrows still rained down hard enough that the damage lingered without causing too much trouble, and now the team knows they've got to strike at the right moment, so it's time to relocate. Ega tells them, next time we're pushing forward, no more stopping here. Then the girl drops right in front of him and he jerks back, completely startled by what's happening. He calls her over and blurts out, what's under that skirt? And she's totally lost at first, but it quickly looks like nothing's there. Don't even think about it, keep it the same, don't raise it. She's wearing the same outfit as Chio, but it turns out that culture doesn't have the habit of wearing anything underneath, because when she tried, it became an absolute disaster. Then they finally got to leave. The next crew was even better, led by a mountain hunter who looked like he could track anyone through the wild. So his offense got way sharper. He could even spot the enemy marks and the structures they were building, and it felt like Group C, but the hunter skills added even more wins. Ega ends up alone in that moment, staring at the fact that whole group is already done. Then moments later, after all that chaos, they finally head to the group, and yeah, it's packed with problems. At that exact moment, the crowd refused to trust their leaders because their rule was riddled with one disaster after another. And right there, the group couldn't be held down by just anyone. No one could control the others like that, so he used the only thing that would work. He stacked the moment with stronger people. And maybe Aga made that mistake because it's coming back to haunt him. And once the leader hears that, he leans in with praise for the plan, because everyone's been dying to know what's about to happen right then. They're like, so what would you do when the monsters hit, and how do you handle it? They were so fired up, demanding the leader get a good long look, because at that moment, he was the only one who could actually do something. And sure enough, the leader snapped, getting irritated at the crowd, then declaring he'd handle everything himself, like there was nothing to worry about at all. Right after Iga and his crew drained every last yen he had. They hauled themselves into the main city and straight into the editorial department, only to find the editor totally rattled, blurting back and forth with the journalist because she was in full refusal mode right then. Still, she tried to hand her the big job, running the articles for that high-ranking group, the perfect fit for everything she does, and for a second it looked like she might actually get excited. But when it mattered most, she shut it down and refused to write a single article for the group. Soon the editor raves that Aga's Island article blew up completely, and he's over the moon. So now, if she can keep that same level of quality when she covers the high-ranking group next, that's when she'll have even more reason to keep working hard and rising to even bigger fame. They weren't just staring, they were checking what was going down, and the top 5 still stepped up to battle those giant monsters. And the more dragons the monsters piled on, the less surprising it felt, because their crazy powers kept escalating, one jaw-dropping feat after another. And everyone pushed themselves to the limit because she was back, and her power kept surging stronger with every moment. People swore that, no matter what, God still had a whole lot more in store for them to hit hard, defend smart, and make it count. That crew kept a sharp watch, and the editor was blown away by how their supernova hit, yet somehow they still pulled off getting it into the newspaper, like the journalists swept everything onto the table and called out God, even to the dead weight of Iga. The editor admits he gets why she was fired up about that mid-ranking adventurer, but her excitement should have stayed in the Aga lane, because that crew's got way more potential. So she pushes forward, asking if it's really true that Aga's domain will keep getting stronger from here on out, and that's exactly why she has to stay close to him for all this. Aga was the one who raised all 5 Fantastics, and that's why she believed they could build a whole city the same way, someday reaching every ounce of their potential, even if, in the end, everyone's laughing at the whole plan. The editor warns her, take this seriously starting now, or mess around with fake info again, and he'll force her to land an interview with the top 5. Meanwhile, deep inside the castle walls, everyone rushes to their room, right there among the top 5. And somehow only Mori's still standing there, smiling like he just nailed it. Today was a good job. They're grinding through every bit of it like it's just another task, and Mori can't help but start asking, when did all of this turn into work, anyway? After the mission, they didn't split up, everyone stayed close, like they were bonded for the next fight. And almost never did they stay apart for long because they'd trade food and sweets, anything they could get their hands on, to share together. Mori just knows nothing like this will ever change. Then, out of nowhere, she feels something shifting under the blanket, and her stomach drops as she wonders, was someone really there? And when she flings the blanket up there, was heroine number one knocked out in Mori's bed. She yanks Mori with all her might, trying to drag him straight into bed with her. And before she even realizes it, Mori slides into the place through a busted window with no clue how she got there. Then she blurts out, "Wake up, right now." But the girl presses in and kisses her with her whole heart, and keeps grabbing her for kiss after kiss, again and again, until she finally wakes up, blurt an apology, and makes everything right, because once that chaos is over, Mori tells her it's all fine, and the next second she's launching herself back on top of him. Soon Mori bursts out and swears she's totally, perfectly normal. A 5-year-old girl. Then right after that they slept together, but something was seriously wrong. "Hey, heroine number one, look closer, something's different." Mori's eyes snap wide and she demands to know what went down. Did the group somehow get hurt? Did the magic stall out? Or is she starving or something? But it wasn't anything, just a slump. She kept wondering if she was even enjoying herself anymore, because it felt like every good thing eventually crashes to an end. Then after a while, Mori finally drops off to sleep. And heroine number one spots that she's completely wiped out, so she decides to kick back and play a little. Right after that, she rips off the girl's clothes. And then he finally clocked it, she was a girl all along. She gets spooked, then lets out a blood-curdling scream. The next day, Tiana bursts into the room, tells everyone Mori's already 15, and then insists, with total confidence, that she's way too old to keep wearing those underwear. Soon, she smashed heroine number one with full force, driving the slap home like a thunderclap. She'd been trying to wear that outfit because she wanted to live as a boy, but she could never fully change the lower part. Tiana then told her, "Don't worry, we can grab the right stuff later," so she could finally get underwear that would fit better. Right after that, the door slams shut and Mori snaps, raging that heroine number one is a total disaster for doing something like this to him, and he can't even wrap his head around the fact that this was really happening. Then she decides to head into the hall and check on Tiana, who's there reading. But right in the middle of all this, she spots something. Then she holds her breath, stays completely still, and only after she's ready, she draws Tiana's attention. And there he is. Cross shows up and snatches some of Tiana's time, grabbing 2 invitations and telling her, basically, "If you're interested, use these for me." It was all about getting those movie invitations. Mori clocked it instantly. Roberta had already warned Tiana to hold off and see what happened, and now, with Mori back and missions wrapping up, they finally got the chance to breathe and relax. And they've got nothing planned for today. Tiana agreed it was true, but she didn't seem all that interested. Still, she said it gave her the perfect opening to hit back with a direct answer, quick as lightning. And before long, Tiana blurts that she can't date Cross, so the poor boy just stands there, stunned. And just like that, he blows up over what might happen. Then he blurts out, "Wait, do you like anyone?" But Tiana snaps back, "Nope, that's not the real reason." She makes it crystal clear, she has zero plans to date anyone. Roberta agrees that she said it that way because everyone was worried about the missions, but Cross pushes the truth even further, saying he gets it, she's driven by pure responsibility. Roberta warns her that if she keeps barging in, that decision will slam down on her, and she'll get crushed the moment she tries to interrupt. Then Roberta tells her to just listen, swears she's been trying to lock that thought away for good, and pushes, "Do you know why?" Cross answers, "Because nobody can live a real life without love." Tiana thinks maybe, but the truth is, she's freaked out by the whole situation, and even Mori clocks it instantly. This isn't the moment to summon that kind of courage, she needs a lifeline. Right then, heroine number one steps onto the scene, and Mori seizes the opening like it's his moment, drawing the spotlight onto the one heroine. She says everyone should stop her and not bother Tiana while they're shopping, but then she insists she'd never, ever pull something like that. And just like that, Roberta finally cools off and tells Tiana, "If you were planning to shop with Mori, then there's nothing to worry about." She finally gets what's going on, then blurts out a heartfelt apology, and admits the 3 of them just happened to miss each other at that exact moment. Right after they dashed out to shop, Tiana nudged him to pick out clothes for Mori, only to end up getting pretty embarrassed by what she wound up wearing. Right in the middle of it all, the journalist spots that Cross is alone, and her feet freeze on the spot as she just stands there. It felt like the universe was nodding, like he was finally, fully ready in that exact moment. She steps up with a bright smile, tells him it's an honor to meet him, and asks if she can score an interview. Then she introduces herself and reveals she's a journalist. He asks why she'd be so embarrassed, says he's free with an open schedule, and insists she can even look. Then, without meaning to, he ends up dropping the invitation anyway. It's for a movie and she freezes and asks why, but he just tells her he couldn't possibly get that kind of invitation for her. And yeah, today was the day they'd finally hit a closer mission, and he even gave her time to get back. He wanted to sneak out and see a movie with her, like with her boyfriend or whatever, but she snaps back that she doesn't have one. Roberta freezes over, then blurts that she could bring a friend. And not only does she have 0 friends, she still ends up thanking someone. Then she immediately starts with an interview. She hurtled into the thick of it, right in the middle where it all started to explode. And he starts rambling about every fight they'd had and everything that happened, only his answers are so vague it's impossible to make sense of him, and dealing with it is a nightmare. He's insanely strict, and he's got every answer lined up for moments like this, so when she thinks she can finally expose his real feelings, it's like she's poking the bear. She just blurts out the question, who's his rival group, and he doesn't really get it at first, so he stammers into talking about heroine number 1 and her crew, and it turns into this totally tangled mess fast. Right after the journalist blurts out, maybe there's something in the middle of all this, the whole situation starts to feel way darker. But he kept yapping about only the top-tier groups, and she's like, then why don't you throw an iron bar right in the middle of this? Soon as she asks what he's thinking about Aga's domain, his face twists into something complicated. Then he snaps back that he's not here to spill answers just to stir up a frenzy, because he and Aga aren't a group in the first place. Their opinions clashed too hard. It was simple Aga and he just didn't match in fighting power, so splitting paths was the best call for both of them. They both knew it, and he's grown to respect Aga like a true close friend now. And then he slams the table because the journalist finally caves, admitting she's giving the exact answer she wanted to hear. Soon she blurts out that it's true, she got it straight from Aga himself. Then she shoots back, yeah, I met him, and explains she even interviewed him about what he's been doing nearby. Before long, he's buzzing with excitement. He fires back, so that was your article. When she confirms it, he leans in for one more shot. Does he really think Aga's domain is some kind of rival group? Then he bursts into laughter. He even said he'd read that article on his own. Stuff like collecting territory was Aga can handle that, but adventuring, that was a whole different beast. A totally different life packed with raw talent and power, spinning outside the cold, counting path of fate's numbers. Aga could see it clearer than anyone. Talent could carve out differences they just couldn't match. He loved adventure more than anyone. It was basically his favorite thing to do, and he always made sure the maintenance jobs matched his skill. He was so realistic he could basically handle a whole skill complex himself, though calling him realistic makes it sound like Aga was some grown-up, when the truth is, he was the exact opposite. It was like he had a tiny version of himself bursting with energy, ready to throw himself into fights everywhere. Weeks have blown by since that moment. She was done cranking out all those magazines with everyone, and it was draining her so hard she couldn't keep up anymore. Aga ended up running around for him. Because it's so far away, she's convinced she can't split in two to interview both of them. Right then the editor barrels in and tells me, I just saw some unbelievable news. The 5 Fantastics finally seized their very first Demon King level mission. Now they're on the way to the Dragon's Castle, and they're buzzing because these jobs could be the spark that puts her in the spotlight, and yep, the instincts were right. But she just vanished in that exact moment, like God dropped the final word and walked away. The castle was nothing more than a dot beyond Iga, and that was it. The 5 Fantastics and the domains of Iga were barreling toward each other, like a collision you just couldn't stop. Alright, let's hit day 2, Ago-S waiting at the port, locked in, ready for the moment. It's time to report what went down the day before, and he leads the 150 members straight into an expedition. They pulled off a ton of good, but they burned through literally every last bit of money. And then just like that, the very next day hits. Everyone felt wrecked, those hangovers slammed into them, brutally and all at once. Soon Ega tells them they can finally rest, and every single one of them blurts out apologies. He shrugs and says, it's fine, I just need to be smarter now, lay off the drink and keep everything in moderation. Then he storms into the main hall and boom, he's laughing like he owns the place. But Galshias and Igarashi weren't laughing, because at that exact moment everything felt wrong, with their funds sitting at 0. Kara knew it, and this was his final heartbeat. Now he had to lead them there right on time, and Egon had to pull off something that would set everything in motion exactly when it mattered. But it wasn't like he could just take the day off to process everything. Every coin they had went into potions and repairing the shattered gear, and now they had to push straight into the next day. Galshias wants to grab some supplies using the magic ore, but he just shuts that down. He says he's saving the ore as a last resort, because he's already got a plan cooking with it. Right after that, she asks, can we sell the rice? But everyone knows it'll be a nightmare because people in that region live on bread, not rice. From now on, the villages could switch from rice to a whole new crop way easier, and keeping the food system running like that became the absolute top priority. They took it as the next mission, one more tangled mess they'd have to tame, because they needed that loan and they needed it now. In a bunch of wild forms. So for once, they could finally score a bank loan. But the banks come with nasty trade-offs for adventurers. Low-ranking ones are sketchy, so you get almost nothing, while high-ranking adventurers get handled completely differently. And yeah, it was a bit of a hassle at first, until Igarashi finally ends up passing something straight to Eiga. She declawed together exactly 3 million, money kept just for herself, and she needed to hold on to every last bit, even after months working as a minister, which made it brutally hard to keep everything under control. Aga grips her resolve, begs her to hold on with everything she's got, and then, right there, throws out a heartfelt apology. Lending money to the wrong people can blow everything up fast. He's watched groups collapse over and over, so if Iga doesn't buy himself some serious time, this could turn into a disaster. But now Galshia tells me flat out there's not much money they can hand out at the start, and yeah, I'm sorry, then they hit me with, so you weren't working as an exchanger, and it turns out that's exactly what he was doing. But the stories are stacking up into a disaster-sized capital, so he's drowning in cash, way more than any investor's inventory, until soon enough his head starts shining like a beacon. So he has one move left. He snatches some borrowing from Igarashi and slips out of the place for a while. Right after that, the meek can't stop thinking about what on earth just happened. All day long, he can't stop obsessing over money. Should he grab a one-day job or let the chance slip by? One day on the job would pay him 8,000, and when you add it all up, like 150 adventurers, those expenses stacked to a whopping 300,000, and yeah, it was a nightmare trying to account for it all. But right after that outside, the wind whipped the skirt up as someone lifted it with the breeze. And the whole crowd flips out, like the older women are tearing into those boys, even though they're just back and forth playing around, and they're nowhere near old enough to be drinking. Eiga feels absolutely worthless in all of this. He can't even scrape together enough money to buy the basic clothes the people need. Now it's go time. He has to do what's necessary and get ready to march into the bank and ask for a loan with everything he's got, but first he has to figure out exactly how to prepare. Start strong, make that first impression hit hard for everyone, and don't forget the care and the clothes too. And if he wanted to keep his credibility intact, he couldn't let the neighbors in on his money tricks, because the spending he was pulling was absolutely wild. And pretty soon he's stuck on one thought: how on earth would she pay that bill? Because after all these villages, they all demand the same price. A stranger closed in and Eiga snapped, asking if it was Igarashi, only to realize nope, it wasn't her. And tell me who was actually there. Was the ninja who dropped to his knees and begged for forgiveness for the intrusion. Igarashi barges into his bath, stunned like, wait, what the hell was going on here? Right then, Igarashi snaps with fury and barks one question at Iga. Except Iga doesn't back off. He tries to explain what's going on, even though Igarashi makes it clear he doesn't want explanations, he wants the truth. But she shoots a question at him, what's he doing, and points right at that log he's been messing with. Soon Iga presses her, asking if she's seeing anyone besides him. She shakes her head and says no. But yeah, this whole place suddenly reeked of her, like she'd been right there with him. He leans in and asks what happened there, and he shakes his head, saying no. But anyway asks if Galshus is back, and when he says yes, Galshus tells him to get Iga to show up outside the bank of the boat. Then he says he'll be there in just a bit, and Iga can't stop replaying what's happening. Then he bolts outside to find out what's going on, because tomorrow morning he's got to be way more careful. And that's when he freezes up, terrified of the boxes that were sitting there right then. Galshia blurts that those boxes should probably handle tomorrow's adventures, because the weapons stacked inside are way more than enough. Soon, Iga leans in and blasts Galshia with the question, did he swipe all that because Galshia claimed he'd got no money or something along those lines? But right then, Galshia blurts out that he was just talking with a merchant, and he says he doesn't need money for something like this. Soon, Iga blurts out, how could you pull that off? Because without money, it's basically impossible, unless you swipe a sport credit, and yeah, he still has to pay it back, just not right now. And Galshus demands, follow me for a little while, like he's got a secret plan. And starts racing through the city, realizing everything as he goes. And right there, inside a warehouse so empty it felt like the world forgot it existed. Soon fires back, asking if he grabbed everything that stuff. Galshia claims it wasn't that big of a deal. He snagged 3 warehouses, and every single one was stuffed to the brim with stuff, no empty space, not a single inch. And that price tag hits a jaw-dropping $9 million. And boom, Iga snatches Galshus right out of the air. Right after Igarashi stepped in and proved Galshia was right, He told everyone he'd have 9 billion soon. Then they demanded all that equipment on the spot to pay up immediately. Now I'm hearing I'll sell 9 million in materials, and they'll jack it up to 10 million just to hold it, because that's exactly what a merchant like him does. Look closer, he wasn't just an ally, he was the one guarding those old traditions people said had to be kept. Right now, as Iga kept saying, everything was set up for him, and all he cared about was cashing out for a cool 10 million. But all of that is more than enough gear for every village, plus a full month of adventure, so now he's not holding back anymore, he's cashing in every last bit of it. Agar insists everything's fine, but 10 million is still a mountain of cash. He just needs to turn 9 million into equipment, and with the adventures they've been dragging through, only he can pull it off. By then, he might actually hit 15 million in just 30 days. So he jammed every account into a single month, and once it was done, that was that. It wasn't as simple as paying a bill at some restaurant. This kind of trust isn't something a merchant can hand out right now, and they both knew it, even if they were calm at that moment, because what was coming next still had to be understood. It wasn't like they outright didn't trust Aga, it was just that back then they had bigger fires to put out, and they needed the payment to land on time so no old credit could be used. But if he couldn't pay, then everything would blow up in the end. That's why he has to bring some collateral to the table. Right after Galcius throws down the question, "Can't you pay in time?" he forces Aga to promise compensation that isn't money, and before long, Igarashi agrees to back that deal too. And just like that, they lock in a contract. The contract says that if the bill rockets past 10 million and they don't pay within a month, he can finally claim and deal with the materials he's been holding on to. If he couldn't cough up the payment on time, the plan was savage. Grab the rare ores and the rice sitting right there, then sell them to cover what he owed. In the end, Ega finally figures it out. The contract was already there from the very start of the shift, so yeah, it all checks out perfectly. No way to make up for all that right then. Taking millions seemed like the safest play, no mess, no spies. But Iga didn't want to touch one thing, begging a friend, an ally for a loan. This could smash the whole group, and even then he'd still try to get the bank to lend him money like it's nothing, because the truth is, it's a tangled mess. Galcia says that if he's got demons in his head, then he's got every right to trade them away for something better. He's just a seller, plain and simple, so why not squeeze out a bigger payout? All it takes is trust. Get that nod that he'll really buy, and you can sell him the magic ores while cutting the risk down to a safe, solid deal. And yeah, chasing it like that was exactly what always happens. An owner hands off the route to an exchanger, and the transition hits like clockwork. They winked at each other, and Aga stayed put with hard, unblinking eyes. Igarashi leans in and demands he prove he's actually pushing himself with that conformity, because for now, all they can do is handle the rest. Ega throws his hands up and apologizes to both of them. And right as it's sealed, he drops his guard, thanks them, and signs that contract like his life depends on it. The next day hits, and they're packing up to storm straight into the forest. And just like that, everything stays calm, at least for now. The village has suddenly opened even more exits, and now the group is rushing in too, and that gives him the exact lifeline he needs in that moment. Just as things start to spiral, that ninja shows up again and tells him, "Turns out, you didn't have to worry about anything." And they're going to tell everyone that Aga's got incredible friends, and that they looked up to him all over again. Higa ends up thanking him for everything, then bolts into the forest to figure out what's going on, telling them they can all start today. Right then he accepts everyone, but this whole crew is totally gone for today, and they spill into the forest in a spinning, rotating formation. And that's how they finally saw the monsters right ahead, so they'd better move fast and make sure the president's taken care of. Everything was freaking him out since they'd been left behind without their owners. Now the worst troublemaker finally shows up, complaining that the monsters couldn't handle things like that, and immediately asks if the wolf pack can go first. Aga shrugs and says, "It's all good, let's roll." Those monsters stood no chance against them at all. 30 minutes later, they stagger back absolutely wrecked, bruises everywhere and problems exploding all around them. Aga's totally blindsided, his brain just shuts down in pure confusion. They couldn't stop wondering what was setting off the alarm, asking if everyone was okay. Then the truth hit them hard, because they were completely caught off guard and fell asleep to some surprise mushrooms. So they ended up with a couple of mushrooms just snoozing around. Turns out they scored 2 of them. Soon enough, he asks if they brought anything, then the truth hits, they didn't. Still, Group C ends up gearing up to leave too, and Iga shrugs it off like it was all fine. And the best part, letting every group roll out every 10 minutes was a genius move. And that way they could bolt out of the forest if anything went wrong. But then the ordinary group member came back completely wrecked, like something out of the ordinary hunted him down. And they stumbled on this massive monkey, froze in place with no way out, and walked away with absolutely nothing to show for it. And right then things started to turn seriously ugly. Only after an hour of grinding their strength back did they finally survive each fight. By the end, they still racked up 6 wins, clocking 18 losses in the fight, yet somehow they only managed to claw back a little ground. At the blacksmith's, she promises she can give him 70,000 right after all that, and she rubs it in that it's way cheaper than the other day. He smiled and promised, "I'll be back tomorrow and the day after." And then, boom, right after they pulled in $220,000, they raked in $70,000 in just one day, which was honestly a brutally inefficient way to do it. On the boat, Galshia points out they're in the red, and she demands 320,000. From 320,000 down to 70,000 is 250,000, and now that gap is hanging over them in the red like a weight. And yeah, those folks from a simple village didn't have it easy. Problems were piled on them. And yeah, collecting every single judgment would take forever, but then, just like that, he had a card up his sleeve.